What's up, friends? How you doing? What's up, Khurshid? Great to see you. How is everybody today? Man, I'm good. I'm doing my best here. Let's see. Am I currently live? I'm currently live. It looks like everything updated the way that I wanted it to update, I think. Yep. And let's see. And just teasing people on Twitter. What's up, Bridgewater? How are you? Good to see you. I'm currently doing my best to actually get my shit together. It's not even that early. I just haven't really started moving yet. I got the coffee and didn't actually open it yet, which is a whole mistake. How do I mark this on red? I did the thing. I opened a thing. Okay, hold on. Let me write a note because I just opened a message that I can't mark on red, and now I have to make sure that I don't do that thing where I forget to respond to somebody, because in an hour and a half when I'm done with this stream, zero chance I'm going to remember that I just read that message. Respond to all right, note taken. Let's get into this. What is up, y'all? What's up, Hanak? Making an omelet. Ooh, I like the idea of making an omelet. I was just watching Top Chef, maybe one of the cooking shows, and the challenge was you had to make a French omelet, like the one that's basically it's such a fine line between not cooked and burnt when it's the traditional French omelet style, and it looked hard, and now I want to try it. We're doing something. So I think I've mentioned this before on the show, but Marissa and I, my wife, are doing a cooking channel now. We're calling it Hungry Love. Let me find the actual link to it. Here it is. I'm gonna get some energy. Give me a sec. I gotta get rolling here. I'm like, I will have energy. I just need a moment. All right, here we go. So yeah, this is our YouTube channel on food, and so we've only got the one video up now, but we're planning another one, and we're gonna shoot it this weekend. And the goal is we're gonna take 3 different roast chicken recipes from 3 different chefs that we admire, and we're gonna do our best to we're gonna do our best to make those perfectly, and then we're gonna decide which ones we like better, and then as a follow-up we're gonna try to kind of riff on the recipes and get the one that's right for us. Because I feel like one of the things that's very, food is a very subjective thing. Like, yes, there are objectively right and wrong ways to cook things, but at the same time, flavor is something that you, I don't know. I mean, flavor is something that you just kind of get into, right? Like you do or don't like chocolate, or very sweet or not sweet or sour or whatever. Like you kind of build your own flavor profile, and so what one chef loves can be perfectly prepared and still not be your favorite flavor, and I think that's okay, right? So I think what we're trying to do is I saw this. There's this one guy who pits chefs against each other, and I think he goes by Anti-Chef is the name of the channel. Let me see if that's correct. Anti-Chef. Yeah. So this channel here, Anti-Chef, does a thing, calls it a cage match, where it's 3 recipes kind of pitted against each other. But I like the idea of taking that and then sort of evolving it, right? And Joshua Weissman does this. I watch a lot of cooking YouTube. And Joshua Weissman does this where he'll do like, we cooked potatoes every way that we could think of to cook potatoes, and then at the end they try to combine their favorites into one like super recipe, which I think that one's a little silly because it's, you know, it's like, it's kind of intentionally over the top for YouTube. But I like the idea of kind of like learn 3 techniques to do something and then figure out what your favorite parts of all those techniques are and see if you can kind of adapt and adopt things to make a recipe that feels yours. The new toolbar on the bottom of the screen, like this, where we're showing the comments. This is StreamYard. I'm using StreamYard to multi-stream, and it's, yeah. So I kind of intentionally simplified. I was spending a lot of time on a custom built streaming setup where I was using OBS, which is great software for streaming, and then I had built a custom web app that laid over the top of my stream, and that controlled like the chat and stuff like that. And I think maybe eventually I'll get back to working on that, but what I was noticing was that like little things would break and it prevented me from being able to do stuff I wanted to do. And it, like, I don't know, I was like stressing about it. So this idea of going back to StreamYard, not going back to, but using StreamYard also allowed me to start streaming to YouTube and Twitch, and it also works on Twitter and LinkedIn, although I don't know that like anybody watching from Twitter or LinkedIn right now. It's usually like 1 or 2 people on those platforms, which I appreciate. I'm glad you're here. But I think really what I'm trying to do is make a slow gradient to where I just focus on YouTube. Mainly because I think, like, I don't know, Twitch is clearly not super invested in the software category, and so I think it's very grindy. And also Twitch wants you to be online like 5 days a week, and I'm just not gonna do that. Like I'm not that kind of streamer. And so I'm thinking like YouTube's probably the right place for me, just because that's where I put the majority of my content anyways, and it's where the majority of the people who follow my video stuff are anyways. But yeah, so I put out a whole like ponderous title on this one because a handful of things have happened recently that have got me thinking about like future. And oh, you missed my migration from Astro 2 to 4. Honestly, like 22 on X. Oh, all right. Well, maybe I'm underestimating Twitter at this point. I should maybe give it a little more of a shot. What's up, Jason? How you doing? Can't grow a beard, so I can't scream. Yeah, I mean, you can see like my beard is so out of control. Especially like in profile, you can see how like fluffy and floofy it is. And also, this is after I like put oil in and comb it down, because if I let it do what it wants to do, it starts going out in that direction, and it starts to look real weird. So I have to do a lot to. Anyways, I'm going to get my beard trimmed today. Because okay, so this all ties together because I'm thinking about the future and like how do you do this stuff, right? So in my personal situation, I'm on the next leg of a weird personal journey. I started out as a musician and I couldn't figure out how to make it work as a musician, so I started an agency and I did design and dev for local businesses as an agency, and then that was too hectic. I was working too many hours, so I tried consulting, contracting. That was too lonely, so I wanted to join a team. So I joined IBM and I worked as eventually as a front-end architect there. And then that was too corporate, so I tried startups. I went to Gatsby. Gatsby was too much of a shit show, so I went to Netlify. Netlify ran well, but it started to get to the point where it felt too corporate again. So here I am. I'm doing my solo thing, right? And then along the way, I shifted my job from being obviously musician to designer, to agency owner, to principal engineer, to whatever the hell I was at Gatsby. I was like a general community and engineer. I don't know. I did a lot of stuff at Gatsby, and it didn't really. I used to call the team there that worked with me the Island of Misfit Toys, because it was like we did things because they needed to be done, and we didn't really have clear job titles or clear responsibilities. It was sort of like all the things that couldn't be well defined landed in this area. And then I think Sarah Drasner at Netlify kind of codified this as a developer experience division at Netlify, which was I think a really good call, and unfortunately not one that survived hers and later my departure at Netlify. I think it got rolled back under maybe it's under engineering now. I think it did the roundabout of like it went from being its own thing to being under marketing. Now it's under engineering, and I'm happy it's under engineering. That's a better place for it. Yeah, DevRel catch-all engineer, I think, is a good thing. I think so anyway, so my journey's been kind of wild, and these days, like, I would say I'm more of a video producer and director than I am anything else. Like, I still write a ton of code. I still consult for companies in the background. I still help with developer experience. I still help with product engineering. I'm like in the middle of building out the like one of the official sample apps for a company right now. Like, there's a million things that I still do, but I would say my focus, like if I'm talking about what I'm optimizing for, which I went off on that for quite a while last Tuesday. If you want to watch that episode, I can find a link. Hold please while I locate said link. And we're gonna go, live this one, and I need to rename this one. It doesn't have an actual title. It's just like my standard title. But anyways, this episode here, which that link sucks. Not a great link. I talked a lot about like balancing work and life, but also in balancing work and life, realizing that there's no such thing as balance. You're just optimizing for different things and willing to make trade-offs so that the thing you're optimizing for takes precedence and everything else kind of falls away, and you accept that. It's okay. Like, you can have a focus as long as you understand that other things suffer while one thing gets focus. So I think like my general thoughts lately have been around like, all right, I'm on this next journey, and I'm focused on growing in the future. And the interesting thing, let's see, how do I talk about this? How do I talk about this without trying to make it sound like I think I'm a genius? Because that's not what I mean, but it's going to sound that way. So I'm just going to caveat with like, I'm not as cocky as this is about to sound. I promise. But when an idea is new enough and like different enough, it is very difficult to get buy-in on that idea. And so something that I'm currently working on is I'm trying to get people to stop thinking small with the way that they communicate to their audience. Like, I think there is a set playbook right now where they're kind of afraid to step out of it. And so they do conference sponsorships, they get booths at events, they host webinars, they send email campaigns, and they'll, maybe film customer interviews or something. But there's a ocean of that stuff out there, and it all looks the same and it all sounds the same, and there's only so many ways you can do a conference event booth. And like, sure, there's lots of room for innovation in those spaces, but at the end of the day, like, we're not hearing a lot about like so-and-so's super cool conference booth. And so if you want to stand out in a crowd of companies that are all funded by the same small handful of investors who all get the same handful of pet advisors that go talk to these companies and tell them what to do, and I say that lovingly because I'm one of them, you have to take risks, right? You have to step outside of what's normal and do something that's remarkable. And remarkable in this sense is something that is not necessarily like quantitatively better, although I believe that it is. But I mean, literally, you see it and you go, I've never seen that before. Like, you're remarking on it, remarkable in that sense. And that, to me, it's risky, but it is safer to me than continuing to spend hundreds of thousands or even millions of dollars on running a playbook that's just not gonna make you stand out, right? Like so much. There was a thread that I thought was really good from what's his real name? His name is Zeej on Twitter. Let me find the actual thread here. Somewhere in here is where I quoted it. David Kramer at Sentry. So this is a good article that he wrote called "You Suck at Marketing," and I don't know that I love the tone of like I don't know. I know that this stuff works, like to push that, like, you know, you're failing if you don't do this. I struggle with that because I don't like the FOMO. I like to steer into the positive, which is probably why I'm not doing a good job of actually selling this stuff. But anyways, the article is about this idea of like everybody thinks product-led growth is the whole thing. And if you make a good product, people will come, you know, if you build it, they'll come, sort of thing. And while that's sort of true, the vast majority of people, especially now that social media is fracturing so hard, they're not aware of they're not even aware of what good products are out there, right? So the vast majority of the work for most companies to do is brand awareness. And if you want to make an impact, you got to make sure people know that you're there so that they can notice when you do it, right? And so many companies aren't willing to do that work. They think that it's not money well spent. They think that, you know, well, if we're just good enough, if our features are good enough, then people will pay attention. But that's not how that works in real life. You know, every company that we're aware of, most likely we learned about it through some kind of brand awareness marketing first. And if we didn't learn it through brand awareness marketing, the people who told us about it probably did, right? Like word of mouth is a flywheel that has to be fueled by something. And, you know, one of the big vectors that they have is influencer marketing. That stuff, like if you've seen on my YouTube channel, sometimes I put out tutorials that are like how to build X with Y tool. A lot of times companies hire me to make those, and that's influencer marketing, right? When Theo talks about a tool that he likes, that's him being hired by that company to talk about that tool. It's influencer marketing. A huge amount of the dev content creation space is influencer marketing these days, and it works because we want to hear what other engineers are interested in, right? This brand awareness marketing. But the other piece of it that we're not talking about is like, how far can you go with like influencer marketing? Because there's a whole bunch of people who don't watch dev YouTube, who don't pay attention to who's big on Twitter. So how do you reach them, right? And I think the answer is you have to do something more creative. And so, like an example is let's just share the screen here. This is this article by let me switch to a better layout. How about this one? Yeah, I like this one better. So if you look at so Sentry spent a bunch of money on ads like these here, where they put a lot of effort into getting their name out there. And like when you look at these, this doesn't tell you what Sentry does. This doesn't tell you, you know, really anything, right? It's just, here's the name and here's some credibility used by 1 million devs globally. So why would you do this? Why would you spend money on this? Because billboards aren't cheap, especially in San Francisco. So why spend that money? It seems silly, right? But if they didn't do this, then later when somebody brings them a contract that says like, hey, we want to put Sentry in, if they've never heard of it, there's an immediate distrust. Well, I don't know who that is. How do we know they're good, et cetera, et cetera. If you've seen this name enough times, you go, they're big. And because we have some issues with, it's called, I think, mere exposure bias. Yeah. Tend to develop liking or disliking merely because they are familiar with them, right? So basically, if you do good brand awareness, people start to think that they know and trust your company despite actually never seeing anything except your ads. Monday.com is one of the best examples of this I've seen because they carpet bombed Twitter and YouTube and every avenue they could with ads. I mean, let me know in the chat if you've seen Monday.com ads. I know I've seen 1 million of them, right? Never used the product, but I catch myself going like, you know, I bet that's pretty good. and I see it getting named in the ranks of Linear and Trello and all these other companies that are huge. And I'm saying that out loud right now. I actually don't know. I don't know if Linear or Trello is huge. I just know they have great brand awareness. So there it is. It's working as I'm speaking, right? And this is the sort of thing that I think a lot of companies are worried about. Is they think that paying for brand awareness is cheating, but like if you look at every brand that you know of, they paid for it. Like they did. They funded something that made that work. Yeah, like Datadog is this, and it's hard to make something clickbait and sound. You are absolutely right, and this sucks for me. It's okay. It's okay. But yeah, I think, am I targeting content creators or devs as my audience? I'm targeting devs, but I don't know. This is my Tuesday stream. This one is bordering on like just me doing armchair philosophy. If I don't really know what this one is anymore. But yeah, like Monday.com has done a huge amount of advertising, and like you might hate that, but also if you had to like make a list of product management tools, it's pretty likely that Monday will end up on it, and all those potentially better tools that are out there that don't advertise, you have no brand awareness of them, so they can't make it onto your list, right? So, and this is sort of the issue, is like, it's the same thing as like, we're very afraid of putting ourselves out there as humans. Like, we don't want to put ourselves in a position where we can get rejected. But if you don't ask, you can't get a yes, right? Sarah Jasner, when I was working for her, when somebody was feeling hesitant about asking for, you know, a promotion, a raise, an opportunity, or whatever it was, she would say, well, you've already told yourself no, so you've already got a no. So the only option is you'll either get the no that you already have, or you'll get a yes. So you've got nothing to lose by asking. You've only got things to gain. And that is that's kind of a universal truth, especially when you look at like, you know, the playbook might say that X, Y, Z works, but if you look at your numbers, the metrics, it's not. Right? We're getting to the point where it's like baseline incremental teeny tiny growth, and that's not working, and that's why we're seeing some of the issues we're seeing right now. And I'm not going to blame it entirely on that, because that's certainly not the only thing at play here. But like, if companies if companies could let go of the idea that the only thing that matters is engineering, and start thinking about how they message, about how they reach new audiences, about how they get somebody to understand that they're even available in the first place, I don't think we'd be seeing as many like contractions. But yeah, if you don't ask, the answer is definitely no. That is an excellent take, Sue. What's up, S. Brookman? Discovered through YouTube. I'm happy to hear that. I feel like YouTube has me in a sort of like, well, you know what? Let me do a little experiment before I say anything. If I were to ask you, everybody who's watching, what do I do? Like, what do I provide to you that makes you want to watch my stuff? Because I was talking about growth. And I swear I'm getting to the point. I'm just taking a long walk to it. I was having a conversation about this, about like, if you're a content creator, you have to have a niche. You got to focus down. You got to have a target audience. And I know that's all true, but I don't know what mine is. Like, what is what do you think my target audience is? Who am I talking to? What value am I providing? What do you get by watching me? And like, what do you want me to do? Like, what do you get excited when I publish it, right? Because I have some theories, but I think I'm wrong. And I'm also very vague on this myself. Like, I struggle with it a lot. Tech content outside your wheelhouse. Dump important stuff in your brain cavity. Came for the tutorial, stayed for the personality. I appreciate that. You know what? This is a great question that I'm not going to answer right now. Let me star this, and I will come back to it, I promise. Using an interesting tool that you could possibly used in the future, a safe place to chat about tech. You know what? I like that. I like that. So yeah, okay. So this is great. And I think that this accessible, low stakes, fun developer content primarily just focused on front end web development technology that doesn't focus on highly technical details. I like that. Thanks, Charles. So, all right. So this is my theory. I think that I have been doing this for so long that I don't know how to focus on a niche. Like I'm too far removed from being a beginner to make beginner content. Like I know that. I have the curse of knowledge. When I try to explain, like I can't remember what it's like to not understand how JavaScript works. The 0 to 1 for me is so far in my past that I just can't remember anymore. Like it's hard for me to conceptualize the initial learning journey. So for me it's more intermediate concepts, right? But the problem with intermediate concepts is that I don't want to be like okay, and I'm about to say something that needs heavy caveat. So I don't think it is bad to niche down. I think it is bad for me to niche down, right? I don't want to be the TypeScript guy. Like Matt Pocock's got that covered. I don't want to be the remix guy. Kent C. Dodds has got that covered. Or actually Kent is like the testing guy. Anyways, he does a lot. And I think that that very direct and like deep focus is great for somebody who has that disposition. Like your interest is to find something and learn as much about it as you can. I don't have that disposition. I've talked about being a generalist before. I am a generalist. I like to play, right? I like to learn a lot. I like to know how lots of things work. And the part that's really interesting, the part where I go deep, is on this idea of like taking concepts that maybe they're broad in a technical sense, like how do you connect these disparate technologies, or maybe they're broad in like a complete vertical integration sense, where I want to talk about how your technology talks to your product strategy, talks to your marketing strategy, talks to your audience's needs, and how we turn that into a feedback loop, right? That's really interesting to me. And so that generalism makes it really hard to say anything other than like web dev. But web dev is so broad that I don't think it's not like compelling to anybody, right? And then that leaves the like, well, now you got to go FOMO if you want somebody who's never heard of you before to click on the thumbnails and say like, you're doing this wrong, or 5 ways you're screwing your apps up, or those types of titles that again, no shade, like that's what gets people to click. But like at the same time, if I have the same message and it's something to the effect of like, how to future-proof your career, it gets clicks, but it doesn't get FOMO clicks, right? Like how to future-proof your career versus you'll get fired if you don't do this, right? One of them gives you a visceral response, right? And I don't really want to be this YouTuber, and so it's challenging. It's challenging to be in that space, and I don't know how to, what I want to be. I want to be the web dev, like Bob Ross, Mr. Rogers. Like that to me is the target. Like it's just good vibes, good people who did good stuff, right? So I don't know. I don't know. Yeah, like the cleaning is okay. So this is another one. Like that's the kind of stuff I want to make, but honestly, not a lot of people watch that video, and that was like, if I make videos like that, I love them. They make me so happy. And also, like feedback that I got was like, I wasn't sure what this video was about until like 4 minutes in, and nobody's going to stay on YouTube for 4 minutes if they don't know what they're getting. So then it pushes you toward the other kind of editing where it's like, okay, you got 15 seconds to state your case, and you need to have, the title and thumbnail needs to be really, really like bombastic and get somebody to click. And I'm like, God, I don't know. I mean, maybe part of it is just accepting that like it's never going to be, like it's never going to do beast numbers, and that's okay. Like that's not the point. But I don't know. Oh yeah, the four devs one app idea. Yeah, and it was based on Andrew Wong's series. So I'm really glad that you saw that and that you've enjoyed it. Yeah, modern web dev. I think modern web dev is what I like. I'm internet's engineering manager. Okay, all right, I like that. Charles, you're making me feel good today. Thank you. So this is the other trick, right? Is like web dev is only broad to us. That is true. But when you niche down beyond web dev 101, you're not talking to everybody outside of web dev. Like if I'm not saying how to get started with web dev or like your first JavaScript project or whatever, which does really well. Like, I've done some apps like that in the past that are like, hey, how do I get started with X, Y, or Z? And those tend to perform really well because people who don't know tech they're curious. They want to see. Once you move into the midpoint, like if I say that I generally speak to intermediate to advanced engineers, like somebody who is past their junior dev stage into their like the core of their career, starting to work towards senior or senior plus, I think that's accurate. Like that seems to be the area that I speak to. I think that what Charles said about being the internet's engineering manager, maybe that makes sense because I'm trying to help engineers grow their career. I'm typically not focused on starting your career, except in the hiring part, because I think the hiring part is broken and you need a little help with that and some insights and everything because I don't know. It's a rigged system, and so knowing where the traps are can be really helpful. But otherwise, I'm mostly talking to people who are in the middle of their career. I'm not teaching you how to do JavaScript. I'm teaching you how to employ JavaScript in different ways to get different outcomes, right? But not with focus. Like the most focused I am is probably on Astro, but I also don't really want to be the Astro guy, right? Because I don't think that Astro will be. I intend to do this for the rest of my career, and if I'm lucky, the rest of my career is another 30 years. So the next 30 years, I sincerely doubt that Astro is going to continue to be the leading framework for 30 years, right? And maybe that'd be cool, good for them, hopefully. But at the same time, like that 30 years is a long time. 30 years ago, the internet was a very different place, right? Anybody remember? Was that 1994 internet? Nothing like today. So I imagine that 30 years from now, we won't even recognize the internet. It's going to be something completely different. And more than likely, everything we're using today won't really make sense in that internet. We're just going to keep moving and keep learning. And there's a lot to change. So what I would like is to just continue learning and teaching what will help people in the moment. And so, that's like sort of a niche, but it's a pretty broad niche, and that's pretty challenge. Broad range of content is kind of a niche in itself. Yeah, I guess that's, so then what do you call that is maybe the other trick. Like how, because you found me through a recommendation, and when you found me through a recommendation, what was your, like, what were you looking for? Or like, what was the first thing you watched from me? And like because I actually I agree with that. I actually think if I could do anything, I would make this whole thing around like why it's fun to be a web generalist. Like if we could make that sort of the core. Like I wrote this down when I was talking to I had this great call with a social media strategist, and I'm hoping I get a chance to work with her, but I don't know if I can afford it. But what I wrote down was like, I'm the bridge out of beginner. Like once you've watched all the 101 content, what do you do next? And like, how do you keep a tech job? How do you grow as a dev? That's the stuff that I'm interested in. And that's the stuff that I tend to focus on. But how do you communicate that, right? In a way that somebody understands when they're browsing YouTube? Because it's really easy to say like 5 JavaScript mistakes. It's very hard to say, this is a video in a collection of videos that help you round out your career once you get past beginner and start growing towards something that is like enduring and future-proof and like going to bring you a lot of satisfaction as well as income. I don't know. Do I actually venture the entire code base? I think there's a difference between being able to understand a code base and being able to like write a code base, if that makes sense. Because like I can understand Rust code, but I can't write Rust code. I can understand a backend that does some really complicated stuff, but like I probably couldn't write some. Well, I could write some of that stuff, but not quickly, right? And so I think expert is a moving target. And so I think I don't look for sort of like a minimum bar so much as I look for a what I would call general awareness of the soup you're part of. I don't know. It's hard to. There's like this idea. The musicians in the chat will get this, but there's this moment that happens when you start learning an instrument where you go from every single thing you do is like you have to look, if you're on a guitar, you have to like hold the guitar and you got to look at your hands and you're counting the strings and then you got to count the frets and then you put your finger where it's supposed to go and you hit the note and then you hear the note, right? And that's, step one is somebody tells you like, okay, put your finger here, hit that string. Do you hear that note? That's an E, right? Or that like put your fingers in these places and strum the whole thing and that's this chord. And you start to memorize like what a G chord is, what an E chord is. And you learn to play some songs based on their, just like strumming patterns and chords, right? And everything is a very deliberate thing. Like one song, you don't know how to play guitar, right? Then you get better and you learn how to play guitar. You can start to like listen and you kind of recognize like, oh yeah, that's an E chord, that's an F chord. You can kind of sound things out. You can play by ear. Maybe you start to learn scales or something. And then there's like, now you get into like music. You start to learn scales. You start to understand like how different musical tones work, what chords are constructed of, how to make something sound happy or sad. And then all of a sudden you realize you can also sit down at a piano and like make some good sounds on a piano. Like maybe you can't go play all the way, but like enough about music that you're like, wait, this note and this note and this note. That's basically what I would play on the guitar. Hey, cool, a chord. And you can kind of sound stuff out. And suddenly you're like, you don't feel like you're necessarily like a completely capable, can play any instrument musician, but you realize that you're not somebody who only knows how to play one song on guitar anymore. And you get to this point where you can kind of just play, right? And I think that with code, it's the same thing. You as you build knowledge, you start to cross the threshold from like every task is sort of isolated and you have to understand how to like, okay, this task is point A to point B. I'm going to research how these things connect. And you start to get to the point where somebody gives you a task and go, oh, that's kind of like this other thing I did. And you just, know what to Google. You mostly know how it works. Like you're at that point, you just play, right? And even when you go to another programming language, like you already know what control structures are. You know what variables are. You've seen different ways of putting together functions and switch statements and all that stuff. So when you look at it, you're like, okay, like there's some stuff that I don't understand. I don't know what this collection of symbols means, or I don't really know how. For example, like Rust does this interesting stuff with scope and like basically kind of like locking and unlocking variables based on where they are in a program and like that sort of stuff. I don't get that stuff, but I can read, right? Like I can play well enough that when I look at it, I understand what's happening. And so that to me is, I would say that's where it starts to feel like expertise, is you're crossing into this world where it's not about like the specific things you've learned, and it's more about this body of knowledge that you've constructed that allows you to navigate things that are technically completely new to you, but because you have such a broad base of knowledge, it doesn't seem new. It just seems like a new spin on something you've seen in the past, right? That to me is expertise. It's the experience and wisdom that comes with just having done a lot of different varied things. And again, this is why I love being a generalist so much, is that I find that to be true about it's not just code, right? Like if you are a developer and you start to learn about product, then some of the things that were mystifying about why product would ask for certain things or why they would organize in a certain way, it stops being mystifying. You start to understand it. And when you start to understand it, you can start to have agency over it. You can start to affect the product roadmap because you can have conversations with the product team on their level. And then suddenly they're willing to like negotiate with you and they're willing to hear what you have to say, and you can actually start to have agency over how things get prioritized. Same with marketing, same with leadership, same with support, same with every faction of the company that previously felt siloed. The more you learn about their jobs, the more you can speak to them, the more you can have conversations at the right level and not like engineers saying we need engineering things and support says we need support things, and there's nobody there who understands that it's mostly the same thing if you just make these two little compromises, right? It's a superpower. Learning how all those things fit together and then realizing that, like, kind of when you start looking at it, most of these jobs are the same. Like there's so much overlap in skill set between different careers. It almost feels like more the same than not the same, but you have to get the breadth of experience to understand that the center of the Venn diagram is big. There's only these like edges that are different. But I don't know. I mean, I don't know. So to the longest answer ever to a simple question, you need to be able to just play to be an expert, I think, is where that starts to come in. Educational content that shines a light on delivering value with velocity without sacrificing the fun of using modern tech or getting lost with shiny new stuff. Thank you. That's kind of a core value. I'm glad that came across. System designs like sharing real projects, anecdotes. I do some of that. I have a video somewhere where I did a whole diagram of like how the systems worked inside of IBM and how we were tackling those. I think that's kind of like that. Feel good engineering content that's honest without being super contentious. I don't think I am. I don't think contentious isn't really in my nature. Like it's not fun, you know. Bite by bite content, but focus on the real example. I don't. Bite Go. I'm not familiar with Bite Go. Let's look it up. I'm going to have to look at this later because this is a new one. I'm going to throw a link in the chat. Yeah, got started just when the web was starting. Same. Not drilling down into one technology is good for being at a startup. This is okay. All right, Smart Code. This is a good thing. I have a feeling, and I don't know if this is true or not. I just know that this is how I've observed the world to be. So let me jump in here and create. Oh, I'm at my plan limit. Let's see. There's one of these that I can like destroy probably. Oh yeah, here's my IBM system architecture. That was a fun one. All right, you know what? We'll just come down here and do a different thing. So here's sort of what I have noticed about companies is that you get a company and you kind of start out in like company evolution, or let's say company evolution of needs, because I think that's probably more accurate for what's going on here. And so you get your company. I might have made this diagram before, actually, now that I'm thinking about it, but I don't know where it is, so I'm going to make it again. So we've got, on this side, we've got time. And on this side, we have what's the level of specialization? Can I make this vertical? No? Yes. There we go. So what I've noticed is that like when a company is at, say, 0 employees, or I guess it's 1 employee because you can't have a company with 0 because you would have the founder or whatever. And then let's say over here you've got like 1K plus employees. I do think at a certain level it does kind of feel like there's no room for specialization. So down here you would have generalists, and up here you would have specialists. And so if we kind of look at it this way, got our generalists, we got our specialists. Let me zoom out just a little bit here. When a company is brand new, you might need like one specialist who knows everything, but probably what you need more than anything is like one generalist who can do most of everything so that you can demonstrate that the idea works, right? So you're going to heavily be focused on having generalists. And then as the company grows, you kind of start to see that like different pieces of the company emerge, and you really need to have like more specialization, people to come in and do SRE, to do like all sorts of things. But then this thing happens where I actually think it starts to flatten out, and you still need some generalists. Because here's the thing that I've noticed: when companies over specialize and they push out all their generalists, which size tends to do, like the size of a company tends to drive toward bureaucracy, and it tends to drive toward forcing definitions and tight job descriptions, and you can't be broad. And the generalists say, well, like, okay, well, I don't feel comfortable here anymore. Like I'm not exercising all the muscles I want to exercise, and I feel like I'm kind of being forced into this corner. So I'm going to go somewhere else. And maybe they go look for a smaller company to join as a generalist again. But the problem is if you don't have this core of generalists down here, all the specialists very commonly, I won't say every time, but I will say every time I've been in a company or worked with a company, specialists tend to over-focus on their own domain, and they tend to assume that their domain is the driver of all success or failure. And because they don't really look outside of their domain, they tend to miss really obvious things that would make a bigger impact. And so you'll start to see like an engineering org that is very specialized, that's like they're convinced that building the next iteration of the technology is what's going to save the company. But the research team is like waving a document that says like, hey, our customers don't want new features. They want us to fix these 3 things in our product that don't work the way they want them to. And the engineering team won't listen to it because they're like, no, we need to build this new thing, right? I've watched that happen many times. And when you have a generalist, when you've got a good generalist in place that can kind of be here, they can act as a bridge between all these different specializations in a way that helps people put dots together. Like if you are a generalist at a large company and you have the patience for the meetings and the bureaucracy, you can navigate the whole org and talk to the different specialists on their level in a way that drives meaningful change and avoid some of the pitfalls of like, come on, bro, just one more feature, bro, fix everything, come on. That thing is it's very prevalent, right? But I have definitely found that like generalists do really well at small companies. The company's too small to hire a specialist. So being able to go in and do a little bit of every job, like if this is where you feel fire, like if you're like, this is it, this is exactly what I want to do, then look for smaller companies and just know that you're going to change because the company's going to grow. And when the company crosses whatever the threshold is for you, like for me, that threshold is around here, like about, I would say 300. So yeah, somewhere in this range here, like 300 to 500 employees, that's where I start to feel crushed. And it gets hard for me, right? I left Netlify at about 350 employees. I joined IBM. IBM had the population of like a small country, 400,000 people working for it or something. That was when I learned very quickly that I don't do well in those sorts of situations. And like, it won't be true all the time. Like I had companies that were bigger than Netlify that felt less bureaucratic. Like there was less forced specialization. And I've been at companies that were smaller that were way weirder about it, like way more focused on specialties and ownership and domain. So yeah, I think like you can be, you have to do your due diligence, but like knowing where you fall on this spectrum, like, are you a specialist? Then maybe you want to look for the bigger companies that need somebody to come in and like deeply own a piece of discipline. And you might be miserable if you're employee number 10 because they're going to ask you to do all sorts of stuff that's not your specialty. And if you really like the general chaos of like, you get to do a little bit of everything, look for smaller companies because that's what they're going to need, is somebody who can do a little bit of everything and do it pretty well. So that's kind of that's my take on it. I think it's pretty broad, pretty has a lot of like my own experience baked into it, but my my observation of client work and like companies I've consulted with, in addition to the places I've worked as an employee, kind of, it tends to bear that out. Like my experience and the experience of people I've compared it with, that seems reasonably true. I think there are exceptions to the rule, but the exceptions prove the rule, if that makes sense. The live streams with guests. Yeah, that makes sense. That makes sense. Well, thank you for the sub. I appreciate that. Legacy frameworks and a specific version of React, convincing the upgrade isn't the simplest. Yeah. Practice at working with a separate stack and exploring new tech after work is what's leading to burnout. Ooh, burnout is tough because if you... So a quote that I've heard on this, which again is from Sarah Drasner. I learned a lot about my career from Sarah Drasner. But what she said was, burnout isn't necessarily working too many hours. Burnout is working hours in conflict with your values, if that makes sense. So if I am like, I have some examples of this. If I'm working a job and I work 35 hours a week, right? So less than full time, but every one of those 35 hours is a slog because I don't want to do the work that I've been tasked with. And like, I don't know. I don't know if this is a common experience. So this is what happened to me, but in several places, I have a tendency to spot problems. And I use the fact that I'm like a big, loud white dude that people don't like to argue with to point out issues, right? So I try to use the advantages I have to be a voice for change inside of companies. And the side effect of that is that if you're willing to speak up and like own outcomes, because typically if I'm seeing a problem, I'm proposing a solution to it and willing to own that outcome. And like, I believe that, you know, if you believe something is right, you should be willing to stake your job on it. And like, if you're right, take the risks and you get the rewards. And if you're right, if you take the risks and you're wrong and you bet your whole job on the thing, then hey, you're not doing your job, right? Like you should be, you're not aligned with the company if the things that you think are worth risking your job on aren't getting the results that the company needs. So anyways, I've done that in the past, and typically what that means is I end up in positions of leadership, whether or not I meant to. I never meant to. But it just kind of like you see a problem and you want to solve that problem. And then you realize that with a little bit more scope of control, you can solve a few more problems. And so you take a little more scope of control, and then you're a manager, and then you're a VP. And then all of a sudden it's like everything is hard. And I just found that like when I got into a role like that, every day was full of things that made me sad because it wasn't suited to me, right? It wasn't what I wanted to be when I grew up. And it's not work that I find emotionally rewarding. Like there's no better feeling than using a position of leadership to help somebody else like get an opportunity or like fulfill a career goal. Those are great feelings. But most of the job isn't that. Most of the job is like being in meetings where people are just like, it's just draining. It's very emotionally draining. And a lot of it is like, you can't tell anybody about this, but here's this thing that happened and you have to deal with it. And when people ask you why, your only real thing that you can say is like, you know, we have to be working toward company goals or some flavor of that, right? And what actually happened is like gnarly. And you know that what happened was the right thing to happen, but without the context, it kind of seems like the company did something terrible, but you can't share somebody's business because like one, it would suck. And two, it, you know, if like from a strictly legal standpoint, you could open yourself up to lawsuits if you told people what happened. So you just have to like put on the corporate face and say, yeah, the company's doing something that you don't like and it's company policy. And I can't tell you anything more than that. I hated it. It like ate at me. I really believe in transparency, but at a certain scale, you can't be transparent or you will get sued. And so here I am. Solo again, because the burnout came from doing things that were just against my values all the time. And like I worked usually as an exec, I worked a little more than 40 hours, not like a lot. It was under 50 for sure. Like I was really, really strong about my boundaries because I did not want to. I've done the long hours and we'll never do it again. But in previous roles, like I've gotten into roles where I was doing 35 hours a week, but it was stuff I didn't want to do anymore. I'd accidentally, through volunteering or through kind of making political plays that I didn't realize I was making at the time because I was young and didn't understand how that stuff worked, I ended up being in positions that I didn't want to be in. I sort of like traded away all the stuff I liked to own all of the problems because I was speaking up about problems. And I just felt like I was dying inside, and I burned out on 35 hours a week. So by contrast, I have, for consistent periods, worked for a loose value of worked 60 plus hours a week for years without feeling burned out, because everything I was doing was fun. I liked my job. I was working, 40-ish hours roughly every week at the job. And then when I got done, I would like play. I'd make a toy. I would screw around with my friends. We'd talk about tech. We'd do whatever the thing was. And it just never felt like work, right? I wasn't burning out. I was just playing all the time. It was a thing that I would have done anyways because this stuff is interesting to me. But I had the freedom that if my interest went somewhere else and I wanted to, say, try to get really good at Fortnite, which I never did, I could stop doing the extra work in the side and just work on like practicing Fortnite, and that was okay, right? There was no guilt, there was no external pressure. But I think if your interests are aligned with the time you're spending, it's hard to burn out. I think you can always overdo it. But like, I think, and the way that Sarah phrased it about like burnout is when work is out of alignment with values. That to me seems like the more common cause, is that we get stuck in these patterns that's we're forced to do things that we don't enjoy. And because of that, it leads to us basically like emotionally grinding ourselves down every day because we see things that we wish we could do, and then we tamp down that desire because we have to do this other thing. That's burnout. Like I think it grinds the soul out of you, and coming back from that is hard. Learn Bach canon indeed. You can, very true. There's some good YouTube on this if you ever want to see how pop music is like I like pop music. And so when I say formulaic, I don't mean that as a dig at pop music. I actually think it's brilliant how creative you can get within the constraints of what is considered like pleasing to the ear from a very narrow like pop music definition. Yeah. Want to pick up the guitar again? Yeah, I want to pick up the guitar again too one of these days. My niche is using optimal technologies that make sense and are going to be around for a while. I think that's, yeah. If I want to be Dev Bob Ross, going to have to make a lot of apps showcasing systems, technologies, functionality, design, or architecture. That's fair. That's fair. I mean, I got a long career ahead of me, so I'll have to keep moving. From Jamaica, what's up? What's up, Tropic Vibes? People can get a weird feel from playing. I think that is true, and I think that learning how to position in a way that feels safe, that doesn't feel like you are. Let's go casual. Let's go cat. Whoa, what is hold on. Oh no, I'm in the wrong mode. Hold a second while I fix. My camera's in shooting mode and not in video mode. This is okay. Watch. I have this app on my phone that lets me do stuff, and I forgot to put it back after I took a little still photo for the thingy. But this is like, look at the color correction. Look this. What is this? This is like Seven Dwarfs level red cheeks. Where are we at? Here we go. All right, that should be better. So anyways, I think the thing that is the thing that's tricky about like fun, right, is that we've been trained to distrust it. And this is weird. It's weird that we see fun as like inherently opposed to productive, or like the idea that doing something that is enjoyable is somehow against the work ethic or something like that. And it really bums me out because I don't think it has to be that way. I feel like there's a lot of opportunity out there for us to play productively, if that makes sense. Like, I feel like if we embrace the idea that learning is our journey toward getting information to stick inside of our brain, and we just work backward from how do we make more information stick inside of our brain. I know that I learn way faster when I'm enjoying myself. Like I have a really hard time doing rote memorization of things that aren't interesting to me. And I've noticed this happen in lots of people. Like one of the reasons that I think a lot of people sort of fall off in they have a lot of fun with HTML, they have a lot of fun with CSS, they get to JavaScript and they go, I hate this. And they just kind of fall off. And that's really common. You'll see that through a lot of people. Like they'll get through their HTML and CSS lessons and they'll talk about how much fun they're having. And then when they get into JavaScript, they sort of like, they hit the wall and they're like, you know what, this isn't fun. I don't want to do this. Or maybe they don't say this isn't fun. Like they'll say like, I'm not the type of person who can learn JavaScript. And I think the reason that people feel that way is because it is presented in the most opaque way. Like you're trying to get your brain to learn a new language, but not in a fun way. It's not like when I was learning and I don't still speak Japanese, but when I lived in Japan for like 9 months, we went from not being able to read anything, not being able to speak a word of Japanese to being able to read the phonetic. I don't read kanji, but I could read the phonetic alphabets, the hiragana and katakana. And we learned enough words to like navigate restaurant menus and like casual interactions, not enough to speak Japanese, basically enough to like greet somebody, order something, and then apologize and say, I don't speak Japanese. Do you speak English? That was the extent of my Japanese. But when we were learning this, we had these really fun moments along the way. We would learn, and then we would go and look at a food menu and realize that we knew words all of a sudden. And that now this menu wasn't us saying like, sorry, do you have an English menu? It was us saying like, I know that one, we want this, or I know this one, I want that. We walked outside and we got to experience the like what it's like to become literate, which I learned to read before my memory really kicked in, right? Like I don't have memories of not being able to read and then being able to read as a kid. It's just a sort of a thing that like, as far back as my memory goes, I can remember being able to read, right? I got to see what it felt like to become literate. That was fun. That was so cool. We walked out of our front door and looked across the street and there was a sign that said ramen. There was nothing else about this building that indicated in any way that it was a restaurant, but all of a sudden we knew we had access to something that was previously closed off to us. Damn it, that was fun. It was just so cool, right? And I think a lot of times with JavaScript, or with coding or a lot of learning and professional growth, we don't find ways to make it fun. We just say like, now memorize what a variable is. And we're like, okay, but I guess whatever. And then like, all right, now this is how, functions work. This is how scope works. And it's like these scientific, very dry, very like memorization heavy things. And we don't make it fun. HTML and CSS, you get all this feedback. You put something on the page and it shows up and you see something happen. You're like, wow, I just controlled the computer. I feel like a genius. It's fun, right? And JavaScript, there's so many conceptual hurdles you have to clear before you can like build something fun, at least in the way that we usually teach it, that I think that leads to a lot of people feeling like, oh, well, clearly JavaScript was not for me because I had so much fun with HTML and CSS, and then JavaScript wasn't fun, so it's clearly the wrong thing, even if that's not how it gets articulated. And I think a lot of times the lack of fun gets articulated as like, I'm not smart enough for this, or I'm not the kind of person who could learn this. And I hate that. It bums me out so bad because I don't think that's true. I think that when learning stops feeling fun, we tend to blame ourselves. And then because we're all broken, we start to treasure that feeling of powering through awful shit as like work ethic or grit or whatever it is. And the idea that you could just have fun and learn things that are valuable it feels like cheating. And so people want to say that it's bad or it makes them uncomfortable or whatever. Man, that sucks. I really don't like that. I wish that we could embrace this idea that like I will learn faster than most people because I find a lot of fun in learning new things. And because it's fun, I want to do more of it. Like I'll read the books because it's fun to read the books, because seeing the light bulbs connect and finding ways to like shape new knowledge around things that I didn't previously understand. Like, dang, that's cool. It's fun. I enjoy it. I want to do it. And so I learn really fast, not because I'm inherently more capable of learning, but because I'm inherently more interested, right? Than somebody who's slogging through it and feeling miserable because they don't want to do it, right? So I don't know. I think like if we can make work fun, it's going to, here's what I know. When we have been on teams, and we meaning like my collective group of friends and former coworkers, if the team is fun, if the problems are challenging, if it feels like we're like collaborating and working together and having a good time, if you can feel the sort of like in-joke culture and you know, it's not the like, gotta hit this deadline or everybody's fired, gotta hit this deadline or we're gonna have to do layoffs, gotta do this, you know, it's like everything is an emergency, everything is or else bad things happen type of statement, where this like haze of like, are we in trouble, are we gonna get fired, are we gonna lose our jobs? Like, nobody's creative in that environment, nobody's doing their best work in that environment. When you're in the fun environment where it just feels like you're working toward a shared goal and you've got like interesting, challenging problems and people feel taken care of and like they're part of, and again, not family, but like part of a team. You're part of a collaborative group that is doing things that are fun. Your job is suddenly a good time and you're looking forward to it and you want to do cool things and like you're just more engaged. You want to stay. You're happy. Like you're even like more understanding when things go a little bit wrong because you understand that you're all working toward the same thing. Like the incorporation of actual fun and exploration into a company culture makes every single part of that company culture better. And this idea that somehow, you know, you can't have a workplace that is not very serious and that isn't driven by numbers and all that. You can look at numbers and use the numbers to inform the exploration and to inform the fun. You can absolutely find ways to build things that are fun to pursue that also hit company goals. You can always take a metric and say, all right, here's the thing that we need to move. What's the thing that we could do that we all want to do that would make that number move, right? And a lot of times you can find something. It's very rare that I've been in a situation where I feel like I hate this. I have to do this thing I hate because it needs to make the metric go, unless I've been in a situation where the culture is very like buttoned down and uptight and like unwilling to treat anything as fun. I don't know. It seems like a little bit of an own goal to intentionally strip any sort of like to not celebrate the idea that what we're learning and building is this like fascinating adventure. And we're all, you know, growing and building stuff that never existed before and you know, shaping these moving dots on the screen to our will like freaking pixel wizards. Like, that's cool. It's very cool. It's very fun. We can have so much, I don't know. Anyways, let me just come back over. Let's get serious again. A 60K company, yeah, that it can be a little stifling. Yeah, if you're in a company that doesn't value the kinds of skills you have, like that is really tricky. It's like you have to find a way that you fit in to a company that they value. Like if a company doesn't think that you're doing the job that they need you to do, like you're mismatched. You got to go do something else. Are interviews getting harder compared to previous years? I don't know that they're getting harder. I would say that they're getting better and worse at the same time. Like there's more awareness that it's silly to do LEET code. Because like the only reason to do LEET code is if you want to filter for people who will do pointless busy work because it's how you get a job, right? And that's no shade on anybody who's done LEET code. It's shade on companies that fully understand that LEET code doesn't determine programming skill. LEET code determines your ability to cram for like a midterm exam, because that's effectively what it is. And like, I guess as you get closer to this side of the thing, people who will cram for a midterm exam become more important, or more like you're optimizing for that in your hiring, because you want people who will like follow instructions and you know what I mean? Like people who can go deep into a problem and are cool with taking a set of specs and like, even if it's not the most interesting thing in the world, like doing it anyways. So I think that companies are starting to realize that, and some companies are moving toward better structures of interviews. I still think companies have no concept of like interview training, and when they do, it's terrible. Like, we don't teach people how to interview. We teach people how to follow a checklist, and like, you can't checklist people. You can checklist a McDonald's order. You can checklist a delivery process. You cannot checklist people, because there are just so many exceptions to the rules that aren't bad exceptions. And especially when you start getting into like this generalist side of things, like if you disqualify someone for a job because they don't have exactly the experience you need, but you don't have a clear understanding of what the job is. Like, this happens in developer experience all the time, where companies write job descriptions without a clear understanding of what developer experience is, and then they disqualify candidates off of a job description that they wrote without a clear understanding of the job, right? So it's this sort of like, they had incomplete information, so they made something up, and then they used the thing they made up as a disqualifier. That's bad, right? And so the counter to that is, well, you just follow a system. A standardized interview is something that will be true at every company, and it's leak code and it's whatever. And that's also bad for different reasons. So we're improving on certain aspects where we're starting to recognize that maybe the rote memorization isn't going to be an indicator of whether or not somebody can do this job. It's just an indicator of whether or not they can memorize leak code problems. But also, it puts a lot of the onus onto the company, and usually not the company, but the hiring managers, to write a really clear job description that's not over prescriptive, so that the recruiters don't automatically disqualify people for things that they didn't realize weren't actually that important. They just got put on the list. And also so that the candidates know what they're getting into, so that only people who are actually interested in doing that work apply, right? Like, and that is hard, because when you're an engineering manager and you get told you need to hire, it's not like they take work off your plate. It's just another thing you have to do in addition to everything else that you're already on the hook for that fills up your 40 hours a week. So there's a very, I don't know, it's very tricky. Companies at the inflection point where the generalists are still pushing fast development. That's kind of interesting. Yeah, I think that's like, generalists I think generalists have a tendency to be inventors. But like, also, it's hard to be an inventor at certain levels without being a deep specialist. Like, I think the people who are doing actually interesting stuff with AI right now, they have to be specialists. There's just no way to be an AI generalist yet, unless most of what you're doing is repackaging ChatGPT, which is, fine. There's a lot of cool ways and fun ways to use that. But like, the actual innovation, or like people who are like pushing forward performance formats, people who are writing new specs for things like, yeah, you got to be a specialist to do that type of invention. But the generalist can do a lot to inform and test those things, because a specialist throwing me something that has never existed before is going to get a lot of feedback about whether or not I can use it, right? I would say I'm a better than average dev, but I'm also not a specialist. So you throw me an API and I look at it and go, I have no idea what this is. You got work to do, or else nobody's going to use it. I think, so I kind of agree with this, and I kind of don't. I think companies are optimized to complete tasks as fast as they can, right? The intention of a company is to make a to-do list and then complete that to-do list as quickly as possible. However, companies are not sentient, right? Companies don't, like, nobody sits down at the leadership level of a company and says, how can we screw our employees? And I think that's an important thing to factor in, because like, I've sat in those leadership rooms, and on the other side of the table, leadership is just as confused as to why the company is running the way that it is, because they'll say things like, well, we've got like unlimited PTO, unlimited sick time. We've got all these things about, people are able to take the time they can. We don't have any expectations of working out of work hours. And then, if a team like, and I'm going to give you an anonymized real example. A team is working on a cool problem, and one of the people on that team is an individual contributor. They're excited, so they're working way too many hours because they want to solve this problem. While they're doing that, they're sending Slack messages, they're sending emails at all hours, and stuff is starting to show up in different people's inboxes and stuff. And the teammates start to feel pressure because they're not sure if they're supposed to do that too, right? Because the culture is demonstrating that people do that, right? Nobody in leadership or management told them to do that. In fact, their manager, in this case that I'm referring to, was actively telling them, like, hey, don't do that. Like, you're sending the wrong signal to your team. And so this person didn't. They kept sending stuff whenever they wanted because they were like, well, I don't expect anybody to work when I'm working. I just want to keep working. And so the teammates started doing it, and then other teams started seeing it, and they felt like they needed to do it or they were going to be considered lazy compared to that other team. And so the culture spreads, and it didn't spread because management told people to do things. It spread because the teams weren't controlled. They weren't setting boundaries, and then they used that, like, they felt peer pressure from their coworkers, and so they let their own boundaries slip, and suddenly it became like this whole company thing. And so I actually threatened to pip somebody over working out of hours because it's so important to culture to not do that. But most managers aren't going to do that. Could you imagine how quickly an overachiever would lose their motivation if they get threatened to get fired for working too much? But that's the culture that you need. You need the culture of, like, hey, you can work whenever you want, but you need to be responsible about when you communicate. Schedule your Slack messages, schedule your emails so they happen inside of work hours. It is not your teammates' responsibility to have to see you working and ignore it. You can work however you want, but keep the communication inside of work hours, right? That is a cultural expectation that needs to be enforced. And most of the time you're not going to do it because, like, why would you yell at somebody for being an overachiever? And unless you're thinking about the second and third order effects, because then what happens is after everybody feels like they have to work these long hours, for some reason they start blaming leadership, like leadership told them to do it and would fire them if they stopped. But it was all imagined. It was this, like, cultural hallucination based on people seeing other people working long and continuing to do it. And the fault of management wasn't that they forced people to do it, it's that they didn't force them to stop. Right? So it's very, very, very tricky. And in a work-based culture, we have to set our boundaries, and we need to make sure that we find companies that are willing to help not only respect those boundaries, but also, like, have some cultural agreements on what is and isn't expected, and then show that those boundaries are respected in the way that they promote. Because if you say you can work whenever you want, but we don't expect anybody to work, and then somebody who holds those boundaries doesn't get promoted, but the person who worked 90 hours a week does get promoted, well, you just sent the wrong signal. And now everybody's going to feel like they have to work extra or else they're not going to get promoted, right? If it was me, the person who worked 90 hours a week, I would not promote them. And I would say, when you can find a way to be productive sustainably, that's when we'll start talking about, like, you need to be able to have a life outside of work, right? Like, I'm not going to be your therapist. I'm not going to tell you what being outside of work means for you. But I do know that working this many hours is you basically cutting your salary in half and setting a bad example for everybody around you. Anyways, bit of a rant, but I do think it's really important to recognize that, like, there's no external evil here. There's no sinister crew of people sitting around trying to figure out how to exploit people. It's these tiny little cultural slips that happen at every level of the company. And, when management finds out that everybody will work 70 hours a week without complaining because they saw their friends doing it or their peers doing it, and they keep, that's what everybody does. Like, they're not going to want to lose that. They love that everybody works too many hours. But they want to see that as, like, everybody's excited about the company. And early on, it can feel that way. Like, oh yeah, we all work nights and weekends because it's fun and we're excited about this problem. And then the company can start to feel, like, bitter later on. So again, culture is hard. Culture is like a full-time job, and most companies don't want to spend time on it. They certainly don't want to spend money on it because they see the problem is solving hard engineering problems. But doesn't matter how clever your engineers are if they're all burned out and bitter, right? So finding a way to get a culture that works and finding a way to build a culture that's sustainable is one of the hardest jobs for management and leadership, because usually it's not that management and leadership is building a bad culture. It's that they have to protect the culture from turning on its own, because it will typically, thanks to Western workaholism, it'll start to curdle on its own if you aren't actively maintaining it. Fun stuff about being a leader in tech. Probably being a leader anywhere. Oh, I love that. Yeah, I used to just kind of factor in the idea that the first 10 minutes of every meeting was going to be complete nonsense and joking around. And I think I had probably, obviously everybody thinks that their team is the best, but I do think we had one of the most productive teams because everybody felt connected. Like, we weren't just faces on a Zoom call that gave each other to-do items. We were like people that worked together, and we had, rich inner lives and all those things that make people respect each other and want to do things to take care of each other. And like many of us, some of us stayed friends. Some of us, we still like each other, but like we didn't have enough in common outside of work to be like friends. But we were close as a team. Like, we worked really, really well together because there was this sense of connection and a lot of it came from the fact that our meetings felt like chaos. And a lot of people who like outside teams that would join our meetings were like, how do y'all get anything done? And I was like, we get just as much done, if not more done, than the majority of people around here. We just also enjoy ourselves. So back to the fun thing. Fun is a big deal. I became an Oompa Loompa. Yeah. Not every content creator needs a niche, but when the creator has its center and their content is consistent around the center, I agree with you. I do. I agree with you. I don't exactly know how that plays out. Like, I guess there's this idea of this is kind of a fun little side quest here. Let's talk about what went wrong with Game of Thrones. So there's this idea on the writer's room where you've got like two schools of thought or two potential schools of thought on how to tell a story. And the first one is emergent storytelling. You create characters, you drop them into a world, and you follow them. You watch what happens, right? And you just sort of are along for the ride. And the interesting thing about this is it tends to kind of, it gets interesting and it's fun to watch and you start to really care about these characters, but it also tends to spread out. So the second school of thought is convergent. You have a plot and you need plot points to happen. And so everything that's done is in service of making sure that we deliver the plot points. So what made Game of Thrones magical is that for the first 5 books, George R.R. Martin is doing emergent storytelling. He has dropped characters into this world. He's got a loose idea of where he wants the story to go, but ultimately he's following these characters around, right? And new characters are showing up. Like, if you've read the books and not just the TV show, they left a bunch of characters out of the Game of Thrones series because by the 5th book, we're still getting new characters. We're still like meeting new people and new storylines are emerging. And I think what happened was, like, one, I think the reason the books aren't done yet is because I truly believe that George R.R. Martin is looking at it going, I don't know how to finish this. Like, I think he just honestly is like, it's too big. I don't know how I ever bring this back around unless I write another 15 books. And two, I think that there's a realization that when you switch to resolution, when you get into convergent writing, you are driving toward a goal that forces you to make decisions that wouldn't have otherwise been made. And I think this is what went wrong with the Game of Thrones TV show. You have, the first few seasons are just wonderful. You're building these characters, it's emergent, you're following them around, stuff's happening, storylines are opening. And then the characters all start getting really famous. They are starting to get movie deals. They're starting to move on to like bigger things. Their contracts are getting more expensive. HBO realizes they can't keep the show going for very much longer. So they have to switch to convergent mode. You have to finish it. We have to get to an ending because there's zero chance that like I forget her, Emily Clark, the woman who played Daenerys Targaryen, and the guy who played Jon Snow, like zero chance they're around for 5 more seasons. Like, will not happen. So you've got 10 episodes or whatever it was to wrap this up. So hard switch, no option. You have to switch into convergent writing mode after these 4 whatever seasons of emergent storytelling. And they knew where they wanted to go. I think they worked with George R.R. Martin on what the conclusion of the show was going to be. But suddenly they'd had 4 or 5 seasons to build characters, and they had 10 episodes to get those characters through the rest of their development arc. So each episode suddenly had to do a lot of heavy lifting to get through key plot points to make the resolution make sense. But because it all happened so much faster, because it was convergent, they didn't get the time to like flesh out why characters would have made the choices they made. We didn't get to see enough of like the relationships that were being formed between these plot points to understand how they would have shifted and twisted and become what they became. So what it feels like is that the last season is just characters making choices they never would have made in service of resolving the show. I think had we been able to watch that over 4 more seasons, maybe we would have like put 1 plot point or 2 plot points per season, and we would have gotten to the point where maybe we could have made it work, but we didn't have that luxury. We needed to get to a resolution. So when you talk about like emergent niche versus convergent niche, I worry about having the same problem. And this is, I don't know. I don't know what I don't know that there is a right solution. I think there's just a decision, and you have to be willing to be consistent with the decision that you make. I very much think that my content is emergent. I tend to put out whatever I'm interested in, and I think that that's one of the strengths of my content because hopefully it's clear that I'm very interested in whatever I'm working on. Because it's like, I don't know, I caught my eye and I wanted to make a thing, and so I made the thing. And I very rarely feel like I'm grinding something out because I need to get a video launched. When I have done convergent content creation, like I agreed to a deadline or I had a job that wanted me to do some stuff I didn't want to do or whatever it was, I can feel the grind. I can feel that I sort of just like, there you go. I want to be done with this. And so I don't know. I have a lot of resistance to the idea of convergent stuff, which is one of the reasons that I think I struggle so much with this idea of figuring out what I am. Like what type of content creator am I? I don't know. I think at the end of the day, like really all I want to be is I want to be somebody that talks about philosophy like this. And how do you have a better career? How do you have a life that's less frustrating? How do you make better friends in and out of work? How do how do you take this wild ride and like not feel like you got to the end sad? Right? Like life is long and there's a lot of stuff to do, and it would just be cool if more of us could get to the end and be like, yeah, I'm happy with how I did that. And so that's not a thing though. Like, I mean, I guess it kind of is. Like you can be a philosopher, but I'm not a scholar. So I would say I'm closer to like the dude at the bar who's like rambling at everybody who comes close enough to be unfortunate enough to hear me. But at the same time, like I don't think this stuff is unhelpful. But it feels disingenuous to say anything that would imply that I have any sort of like academic base of anything I'm saying other than just my own life experience, right? So all of that starts to converge on something that makes me uncomfortable, which is that I'm effectively a white dude podcaster. Don't know about that. Don't know if I like that outcome. I just got these ideas, man, and I got to share them. The associated That was fun. Super weird. Uh, where, where, I don't know what that was. Amelia Clark and Kit Harington. Yes, that was exactly what it was. Um, can y'all still hear me? Did like that was that was real weird. um, yeah, like working over time zones is really hard, and like yeah, again, like this is modern work, and like I think there's a reason that we're seeing a pushback to like if not in person, like same time zone work, and I think it's because some of these problems are so hard to solve that companies are deciding that it's not worth the risk, because if you get it wrong it destroys a company. um I don't know, it's weird. uh the sound started repeating. Yeah, I don't know, it was like nothing turned off here, but all of a sudden I just got the note that my it was like your mic disconnected, your camera disconnected, my keyboard wasn't working, my mouse wasn't working. I like I don't know what just that was all very weird. No idea what it was. Um, I started skipping. Good. Somebody clip me skipping. I want to see what that looks like. Um Yeah, I think so. So yeah, what Cody's saying here, I think, is so right. The if you can figure out if somebody knows something very, very quickly if you just engage them in an actual conversation, right? And it also has the benefit of showing you much more useful information than whether or not they know the specific tech that you already know, because people can learn, right? Like a sufficiently qualified person is going to pick things up so fast that it really won't matter what they know right now. What matters is, what they're capable of learning, right? So if you start having a conversation with somebody, you'll get a really good sense right away of, like, do they know what they're talking about? Like Cody Cyan, somebody with 15 years of experience that couldn't explain a unit test. Okay, that's a big red flag that either somebody was so deep in a silo that they don't understand this stuff, or that maybe they were misrepresenting some of their knowledge, right? Big disqualifier right there. And like, and there's a big difference between somebody who says, well, I've worked on one of those companies that never really wrote tests, so like I'm familiar with what the concept of a unit test is, but I'll be honest, I've never had to write one. Like, that conversation is very different from somebody who's like, unit test, and it's very obvious right away that they've never heard that word before, right? And so if you ask somebody, like, talk to me about this. Like, here's one that I loved. For instead of a technical interview, when I could get away with it, what I would do instead is I would ask the candidate to bring a project that they were proud of. And this could be work that was, they could like just screen share some of their closed code base, and it's under NDA so that they can, like, whatever, they're not sharing it with anybody. They could bring me a side project, they could bring me anything. And honestly, I didn't even care if they wrote it. What I was interested in is when I asked them to talk to me about what they liked about it, because you could see, how do they navigate this code base? What are they focused on? What are they able to? How do they explain these things? That starts to show me, one, you can tell if somebody has no idea what the piece of code is that they're showing you. Like, if they start showing you something and telling you about it, and it's very clear that they don't know what any of it does, like, there's your signal, right? You have now a sign that either they didn't write this code and they violated the agreement, or they copy pasted all this code and they don't really get it. They just kind of like smash something together from Stack Overflow or whatever, and they're not going to be able to build the things that you need them to build. Cool, signal, right? But also, how do they explain it? How do they give credit to their teammates if it was a team project? Do they talk about, like, how, when they start talking about what they built, do they talk about, like, what were their motivations for building it, why they prioritize the things they prioritize? Like, what kind of information are they giving you? What are they volunteering? And that's going to start telling you a lot about how they're going to communicate in meetings as well. And so if you start hearing them, they open up the conversation with, like, oh, well, these idiots in management wouldn't let us do X, Y, and Z. It's like, okay, well, you're not going to be fun to work with if everything you're going to do is complaining about somebody outside of your team, or somebody who prevented you from doing the work that you wanted to do. That's not going to stop. Like, if they show that to you in an interview, it's only going to get worse when they're already hired, right? So I think that you having these conversations with people about something that they've done, you get technical information, you get collaboration information, you get like respect, all these things, these huge factors There was this tweet that I saw that I thought was so good from my friend Mel, who goes by Juicebox Hero, which is one of the greatest usernames of all time. And for some reason, my keyboard is still not responding, which is great. I'm really happy about that. No? Still no. Okay, I gotta type on the laptop, so. Here, there's. So, first and foremost, Mel is a great follow if you don't already follow. And second, if I can find here, this is such a good quote. Like, this is exactly, it's just excellent. Nobody cares if you're a 10x programmer, if you're a 0.1x person. Like, just print that on the wall, right? Like, it's such a true thing. If somebody's showing me the most brilliant piece of code that I've ever seen, and along the way they managed to condescend me the whole time, imagine, like, especially, like, this is another place where I use my privilege as a barometer for, like, how I can help influence organizations. If I'm in a conversation with somebody and they're condescending to me, what do you think they're going to do to somebody who's not a white dude, right? Like, if you start to get the vibe that they don't respect your intelligence, that they only will talk to somebody who they consider to be an equivalent or greater engineer, like, get them out immediately. Like, they're going to poison your entire team, right? And it's like, you get that information through conversations. You don't get that information from having somebody solve a leak code problem. Because of course somebody can go memorize how to do a bubble sort algorithm or whatever. It doesn't matter though if they're gonna come into the company and be an absolute tool. Anyways, that's the whole thing. What was my underlying point with the white dude podcaster thing? So I think, no, my underlying point with the white dude podcaster thing is that I worry sometimes that I'm trying to avoid a niche because I just want to be special for existing. And my conceit is that I am somehow special enough that all I have to do is exist, and that's enough. It's one of those like deep insecurities that I feel, because I do think that there are a lot of folks who they started a podcast because they just wanted to feel important, and you can hear that they're basically just sort of like rambling. They're letting their inner monologue onto tape, and there's no goal, there's no value prop, there's no nothing. It's just them sort of journaling in public. Look, I don't mean that that's a bad thing. It's just not what I want to be. Like, I want my existence online. I want the things that I provide to be for the benefit of, like, I want somebody to walk away. Okay, let me rephrase this. So I was talking to somebody about this the other day, and they were talking about, like, you know, what are your goals? Like, okay, back to the point. How do you grow, right, of this thing? What do you want this to be? How do you want to grow? What do you want to accomplish? And I was thinking about this because I don't have kids. I'm not gonna have kids. So one of the, like, some of the things that happen are, like, you think about legacy, you think about long-term impact, and one of the things I worry about is, like, is my long-term impact, does it exist? Am I going to do anything that matters or that helps anybody? And so for me, what I think about legacy is, like, can I have a tiny impact on a large number of people? Like, can a huge group of people look at their careers and find one small thing that I said or did that helped them go a little bit further? What's up? We got somebody coming into the studio and needing the Wi-Fi password. Hello, by the way. Hi. Hello. But so if I think about what I'm like, why am I here? Why am I on camera right now? Why am I having this conversation with all of you in a live stream? And like, why do I make anything that I make? And under all of it, my hope is that I can make this industry a little bit better than I found it. Like help people get a little bit further, help people build a little bit more, help people, understand or even just feel a little bit better. Like if I can say something that helps somebody have a slightly better outlook on how and why things happen, that makes them feel more agency or less overwhelmed or whatever the thing is, right? Like, to me, that's all I'm going to be able to leave behind. And so that then points at, okay, well, maybe I want to do this like philosophy thing and all of that. But then it circles around that central conceit of like, do I really think that I'm special enough to make that kind of an impact, right? Without focus, with just saying like, well, whatever's interesting to me is good for everybody else. That feels like a central conceit, right? So that's where the conflict that I feel around like, do I need a niche? Do I need to focus? Do I need to pick a lane? Versus just saying like, well, I feel like all of these things make me happier, and if what I'm trying to do is share what makes me happy in hopes that somebody else can pick up on some of that and adopt it into their own life, then is that the right approach? Like, I don't know. I don't think there's a right answer. I think it's just trying to find my balance and remembering that, like, on the one side, there's doing everything for other people and feeling like I'm performing. And then on the other side is being such a narcissist that I think it doesn't matter what other people think, and I just make stuff because I like it. I don't know where the right point on the gradient is for anybody, and I think it's different for everybody. But I don't know. That's sort of what I'm wrestling with, and what I'm talking about when I talk about my like white dude podcaster fears is that I'm just kind of like journaling in public in a way that is really only beneficial to me because of whatever. Let's see. When will I have a stream about Angular? I've had several, in fact. Let me pull them up for you. Oh, my keyboard. I gotta restart my computer or something. I don't know what's going on. Let's go here, Angular. Let me find my Angular stuff. So I've got a bunch of Angular stuff, but these two specifically, this one with Mark and this one with Jessica, are about Angular 17. So you can go and find those to get a lot more insight, because they're both on the Angular team at Google. So lots of good information in there. Have I tried turning it off and on? I'm going to have to turn it off and on again. It's going to be... What's up, Pranjal? Thank you for hanging out. Don't underestimate how many people out there just need help and someone to guide them. Yes. So, okay. So this is actually such a good point, and what I think... I saw this other tweet. I'm never going to be able to find it, so I'm not even going to try. But I saw this tweet that was about that, like, we talk about toxic masculinity a lot, and we talk about like all the bad things. You know, we focus on drama, we focus on FOMO, we focus on getting it wrong, we focus on loss, and then we focus on like the versions of masculinity or whatever, like, which I don't care about masculinity so much as I care about this idea of like functional adulthood, and you know, without worrying about, you know, what somebody's gender is, worrying more about like how do we get to a point where like being an adult doesn't have to mean having it all figured out, doesn't have to mean meeting a set of predefined rules that come from really just like external culture. Like we were talking about work culture sort of spiraling out of control because people do a thing and other people think they have to do that thing, and so it sort of becomes these unspoken, indecipherable set of rules of how we should be or how we must be. I think I love the idea of like trying to create a community and maybe even, if I can be so conceited, like maybe show a bit of like lived role model of like what's it like to just kind of be happy as an adult and like have a life that you can be proud of and that you feel good about getting up for every day, and be surrounded by people that you care about and look forward to seeing, and do things that are, you know, some are work and some are fun, and some are both, and it's like, it's kind of okay. Like, I feel like if I were to, you know, if I were to die soon, I'd have a lot of regrets because there's a lot of stuff I want to do still, but I wouldn't have regrets about the stuff I've done, right? Um, and I think a lot about that, and like, I don't, there's a lot of loneliness as adults. There's a lot of disconnection. I especially think since COVID, like, social skills took a big hit. We all forgot. Like, I know I forgot a lot about what it's like to interact with people, what it's like to go out into public. Like, there was a lot of relearning of what social norms are. I mean, I remember I went to a coffee shop. This was after the lockdown had sort of eased up, but before everybody had really come outside again. So it was like the one person in the shop at a time kind of vibe. And I remember I was standing in line for a donut because I like hadn't had a donut since the pandemic started. And we were looking through the window, and this guy, it was clearly the first time he'd been out of his house in like 9 months. And he was thinking about his donut. And like, you know, the stuff that you do when you're alone that you would never do in public, but then you get out and you go out in public for the first time in a year and you forget that you don't do that stuff in public. So he's looking at his donuts and he starts going like this. Like, which is absolutely something that I have done when I'm looking in my fridge trying to decide what I want to eat, right? As I start like just doing weird hand motions, or, you know, I'll start making weird noises or something. And it's just to entertain me because I'm alone and I just want to make some weird noises, right? That's okay. But this dude is in public and he like completely forgot that you're not allowed to do that in public, right? And like, of course you're allowed to do that in public, but like the social norms, right? We forgot how to interact with people. And then he realized what he was doing and he got super embarrassed. And so there was this whole thing, right? And so I think now, like, people aren't seeing each other as much. People are, I know we've had to make like a really concentrated effort as my wife and I to like build back a social fabric after the pandemic, because people we used to see all the time, like, life just changed, right? And we, you know, some of them had kids, some of them had just like lots of complications. So how do you have gatherings that feel safe? How do you get together with people in a group setting and not feel awkward or alone or any of those things? And I don't know. So all of this, again, I'm just kind of back to my my like what Cody says here about like getting through the struggle of the day. I feel like there's a lack of people who try to make you feel good in content creation situations. I think that there's a big drive to make you feel like you need to do something else. Like if you learn this, then you'll be happy. If you stop doing this, then you'll be complete, or whatever the thing is. And that's the FOMO titling, that's the hot takes, and ultimately I think like my central thesis is that if you choose to be happy, then the rest of the decisions start to fall in line, because you're qualifying things differently. Like, do I need to use Next.js or Remix or Astro? It doesn't matter, right? Like, what matters is that I'm doing something that I'm proud of, and that it's helping the people I'm supposed to help, and that I'm getting my work done in a reasonable time frame so that I can go live a life that I enjoy. And so if that is if we reframe, right, instead of saying, am I choosing the right technology, if we instead say, are we meeting the target outcomes? And the target outcomes, by and large, have nothing to do with the tech. It's, are our users happy? Are our objectives being accomplished? Do I enjoy my life? And if those three things are true, right? Or some, like, I enjoy my life more when I'm not working 70 hours because I chose tech that is too hard. Then, you know, the decision you start to back into the decisions, instead of saying like, clearly the technically superior thing is X, and now I must make all these other sacrifices and trade-offs to do things correctly, right? And it also, I think it helps decentralize the identity as well. Like I have this whole thing. I took it down because it felt too, I don't know, it felt culty, and I don't like writing stuff that feels culty. But it was this idea around like my aversion to labels. Like I don't like being labeled. I've never identified with groups. Like like if I go to a CrossFit class, I would never call myself a CrossFitter. If I when I was traveling, when Marissa and I did our couple years living out of a bag, I really didn't like the idea of calling myself a digital nomad because it didn't. I don't want to be a group. I don't want to let somebody else dictate what my personality is by attaching a label to me, right? And for that same reason, I've always felt weird about saying, I'm a Next dev or a remix dev or a Astro dev or whatever it is, because I don't think it's like that's not who I am. That's not a core part of my personality. Like JavaScript has very little to do with who I am as a person. It's just one of the things that I do. And what it allows is not for me to be a JavaScript person. It allows me to create things that I like or that I'm proud of. And, if I didn't do it with JavaScript, I could do it with PHP or with whatever other language I reached for. And it would still, like, I'd still be the same person. Like, my tech choices have nothing to do with who I am. It's, if you yes, if you smash that subscribe button, it will change your life. So, you know what? Why not? Let's take a quick break to say, if you're enjoying any of this, if you like the nonsense that I am sharing, please do hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, consider joining the channel. I drop new episodes on ahead of time for channel members on YouTube. It's like $4 a month. And if I get enough people supporting the channel, it also means that I don't have to get corporate sponsors, which means that I can do way more varied stuff on the channel. I don't really like the idea of charging people for things. I like it when companies pay, but the problem is that companies won't pay for carte blanche. They won't say, here's a bunch of money, do whatever you want. It's very much like, here are our business goals, how are you going to help us meet them? And I'm fine with that. I really enjoy doing that, but there are some things that I want to make that companies aren't going to sponsor. I want to make a whole series on CSS stuff with other people, and that involves travel budgets and things like that. And in order to do that well, it needs sponsorship, right? So that's where I'm hoping that we can build up whatever the YouTube equivalent of a Patreon is, because it means that I have a little more wiggle room to pay for things through the business that are good for the community and not necessarily aligned with corporate goals. So anyways, that's the thing. Not a cult. Yeah, exactly, not a cult. She-Hulk Attorney at Law. Man, people gave that show a lot of crap. I thought that show was so fun. I enjoyed it so much. If 10 people subscribe to my channel in the next 5 minutes, I will trim my beard. I'm gonna trim my beard anyways, but but yes. Anyways, shameless plugs aside, I don't know what is everybody feeling in terms of. I feel like I'm kind of all over the place today because I'm thinking a lot about. Well, honestly, I'm thinking a lot about a lot of this, but yeah, I don't know. Are a bunch of people subscribing on Twitch right now? Is that what's happening? Can I even see what's going on? My Twitch dashboard is so messed up right now. Oh, Charles, you gave out gift subs. Thank you so much. I really appreciate that. Really, really appreciate that. Thank you very much. Yeah, Tatiana Maslany. Did you see Orphan Black? That was the first show that I saw Tatiana Maslany in, and it was so good. It's amazingly good. Can you shave it in City JS London? No. I am using StreamYard. So I have Well, StreamYard is the specific software that puts my video online. I have my streaming kit is absurd. In fact, can I do like an extra hold on. I think I can do like a little desk tour if everybody's interested. Will this work? Let's see. Yeah. All right. Can I add this to the Okay. So this is my can I do this one instead? Yeah, make it a little bigger. Okay, so this is my setup. You're just gonna have to deal with the fact that I'm gonna echo because the mic is here and I am gonna be far away from it. But so this is my main cam here. And then I've got the B cam over here. And then I've got, that's Marissa, my wife. This is the photo, like the photo paper section of my studio. And then over here, that's a light that I have to set up later today. And then around this corner, you can see, can I get around the corner without standing up? Let's see. That's like more set over there. There's a couch and a false wall and stuff like that, my little kitchenette. Marissa's definitely not paying attention, but yeah, got fans. And then let's see, over here, that's my other light. So we've got light there. Let's see, more lights like up here, and then over here, more lights. And then I use this thing here. This is called an ATEM Mini Pro, and that's what runs the two cameras. So if I push buttons, you can see the camera switch here. And then I run my mic. So this mic runs down here and ultimately ends up in this thing, which is called the Rodecaster Pro 2. And that allows me to run a bunch of different mics in and do kind of like mixing on the fly. It's also got sound effects, so I can do things like, I think this one is a sad trombone, maybe. Yeah, so fun. And then I got, set pieces back here. I've got my chest full of things. Also, Cassidy's here. You can see, I'm gonna scoot over closer to it so that you can see it, but this woodcut, Cassidy made that for me. That was super cool of her. And yeah, then we got my split keyboard that's like not working today. So I'm reaching between the split keyboard to type over here. And then I've got my trackpad because I like the trackpad. Yeah, you'll hear I have like my studio has like air. So when I'm tight on the mic, you don't really hear the background noise, but definitely when I get farther away from it, you can hear it. On days that I do like more serious recording, I'll turn that off, and I have like more of these sound blankets. You can actually, let me show this again. You can see back here, I've got like C-stands and sound blankets, so that's protecting me from some of the echo, but then I've got the big central air unit that's on right now. And then the other one over there, that's when it's really cold. We've also got like an additional heat blower thing. But that's how the studio works. Completely missed the broadcast for a thing on X. Yeah, I think they're good, but I've had some issues with the X one, so I tend to drive people toward YouTube these days, but like tons and tons of people are on Twitch as well. Yeah, very, very important to qualify that like none of what I'm using is necessary. Like actually just the phone, the camera on these phones. Because if I switch, like actually let's do a little side by side. Let me get this phone over to about, where would it need to be close? How would this work here? Maybe. Okay, yeah, let's do a side by side. Oh, don't focus on my hand. There we go. So, like you can see a quality difference on the two devices, because I've spent a bunch of money on lenses and color correction and all that kind of stuff, and I don't know why it's so red. Like I don't think I'm that red. Maybe I am. I don't know. Who knows? But so there's definitely some weirdness with you have to tweak things to your settings and stuff. I also don't think I'm doing anything with the color correction or any of the options on can I control the Blitz phone camera? Yeah, okay, so yeah, check this out. So I can even do like, I can turn on the portrait mode, and I can, so like there's a lot of options, and then I can turn on studio light and kind of simplify out the backgrounds and stuff. I think. Oh, what did I just do? I hit a weird button. Okay, ignore all of that. But so anyway, so like this phone camera is actually more than enough for like the majority of what you would need as a streamer. So if you've got an iPhone, you've got a Mac, like you're good to go, right? And the mic on this is also fine. I think I can switch to it for a second. Hold on. Oh, you know what happened? We lost my mic. That's why you're getting so much audio. It's running through my it's running through the wrong thing. It's running through my MacBook mic. That's why the audio sounds like crap right now. So this is the other microphone. This is my phone's microphone. So this honestly might sound better than what you just heard. But it probably will still pick up the AC and any of the echo and stuff like that. Let me see if I can get this to run again. I don't know why that's not. I feel whatever happened was super weird, and my whole kit like just shut off. Okay, let's get back onto this. So that kit's coming up. Hopefully that'll fix itself once it's done. And now I'm on this mic. Okay. All right. So anyways, things are happening, and maybe my mic will get better in just a moment here. Well, thank you so much for recommending the videos. I really do appreciate that. I am using a Moonlander keyboard. It is, it's also got the platform on it, and I really like it for the ergonomics. Be prepared for like 3 weeks of training on it to be able to use it though, because it's not a normal layout, and like a lot of stuff that was on the pinkies moves to the thumbs. The keys go straight up and down instead of being at an angle. There's a steep learning curve. However, it's very cool. Recording in your room littered with kids' toys. I mean, I'm definitely taking advantage of the fact that that I don't have kids to like buy myself the toys. Audio quality is more important than video quality. I think that if you went on the standard MacBook Pro camera, can I get on? I don't know what's going on. Yeah, something's up with my computer. It's apparently due for a reboot because I can't get the audio to come back, the good audio to come back. Like it seems to be dead. So we'll just roll that out of the way because it's not doing anything. So yeah, I'll talk about audio quality while I don't have my good audio quality. I'm currently using the audio quality or the mic on my MacBook Pro, so it's going to sound echoey, it's going to sound reverby. When any background noise happens, you're going to hear it, because my good mic is missing. The toys are a business expense. That is true. I mean, it's not the reason that I did this by any means, but it definitely helped me. Oh, I had all the Mac effects on too. Boo. Let's see if I can make can I make them on voice isolation on the MacBook Pro mic? So let me know what that sounds like. Maybe this is good enough. I don't know. The voice oscillation stuff is getting really, really good, like upsettingly good. So, you know, who knows? Who's to say? But anyways, that's almost no difference. Okay, well, that's fine. It is what it is. And once the stream is over, I'll shut down everything and restart it again and try to figure out why my Mac dumped all of my inputs. Fun stuff. Okay. So Here we go. What are we talking about? What's new? What's next? So, okay, so we were talking about like how to grow, right? So I think I've spent a solid hour just spiraling on what, like what is my purpose? But I want to talk a little bit about growth, and I want to talk about the future. And so one of the big things that I'm working on right now, I would say one of the risks that I'm like the bets that I'm making on myself, because I think that in my career, I have made several big leaps forward by taking calculated risks. I feel like I'm at that point right now where I made the jump to full-time on Learn with Jason in November of 22. So I'm just over a year into doing this. And what I've been working on the whole time, and some of you will remember me talking about this, is I feel like the big next step is I want to make TV, more or less. Like I want to make game shows. I want to make travel docuseries. I want to, I want to play with the idea of like reality competition. There's so many cool things out there for us to make in the scope of tech. And what I have been working on is trying to bridge the gap between our current playbooks and comfort levels as an industry and what is possible looking at like every other vertical, right? And so we're seeing some of this is getting bridged. Like we're seeing influencer marketing becoming a thing. There are tons and tons of devs out there who make their living by making content about other tools, and they get paid to do that. I'm one of them, right? But I think we can go further than that. And so the 4 Web Devs 1 App series, which, there's a new one of those today. Let me share that for a quick second. Not here. What am I doing? Here. This one.
What's up, friends? Jason Link.
So this one just went live today. I'm very, very, very happy with it. It's like some of the most fun that I have had. Actually, where's the actual, somewhere in here is the playlist so I can share the whole thing. Here's the playlist.
What's up, friends? Jason.
So down here.
What's up, friends?
Okay, I'll copy this one. So y'all should go see. Yes, the outside strokes. Oh my goodness. It's just the most, wait, that's not the right one. I want the link with the playlist in it. I don't know why these are so hard to use. Anyways, yeah. Okay, so this is the link to the series. You can also go to, I think, does this work? Let me see. I go in here and I go to lwj.dev/4d1a. That's also the one. So yeah, we've got 4 episodes of it up now. Cody, who's been in the chat today, is in the second to most recent one. We did some D&D themed small businesses. That was super fun. And then this most recent one, we built out habit tracking apps for some kind of, the idea was to make it a little bit edgy. Like I wanted to play with the idea of, the like Dollar Shave Club, Old Spice, poopery, squatty potty kind of vibe of business advertising, just because it seemed like a fun thing to do. And then I invited Chan, Dom, True to come and play, and I think it might have been a mistake. It's so over the top. It's really fun though. So make sure you mark that one to go and read later. It's very fun. But this series is, like, speaking of growth, this series is one of my small bets on how do we make this all more sustainable. And then here's Cassidy. She was on one of the episodes. There's I think a lot of potential in this to go out and do more and make really cool things and just have a lot of fun with it. And so this is like, what do we do? What's the budget version of this? And it's this. It's remote. It's low stakes. We're not doing prizes, giveaways, anything like that. It's just let's build some stuff, let's have some fun, let's show what's possible. And I'm having a blast with it. So what can we do that's more? How do we take it further, right? And so my next big bets here are like I'm self-funding a documentary style one of these. I have Adam Argyle, who's from the Google DevRel team, the Chrome DevRel team, is coming in this week. We're going to do an episode on. Let's see if I can get over to the site, get to the schedule. Here, Adam's coming in, and we're going to do a show live in studio. So actually, once I wrap up for today, I'm going to be tearing down my set here and resetting it to be a two-person setup. So we'll have multiple cameras and all that kind of stuff. I'm actually thinking I might try to get somebody from the community to come and be my camera operator, because I showed you my switcher. So I'm going to have 3 cameras coming in, and I think I'm going to see if somebody wants to come in and be like my producer in the booth to do the camera angles while we're live, because I think it'll be fun. And then, so doing that's going to be live. But then while Adam's here, we're also going to go film in a local restaurant here in Portland. And we're going to have lunch. We're going to have a conversation about, the industry, about Adam's career. Kind of if you've ever seen Anthony Bourdain's Parts Unknown, my goal is to capture that vibe of like a great conversation over great food. And so highlight some of the Portland community, highlight a place that I love, highlight a dev with a really cool history, and talk about some tech that we're both really excited about, which is all the like rapid pace of CSS improvements lately. And then we're going to come back here and we're going to shoot a skit. And like we wrote it, it's going to be super fun. But like for me to do that, I'm paying for the restaurant space. I'm paying for, I've got a director of photography and a assistant camera that I'm paying half day rates to. There's going to be editing. There's going to be all this stuff. So I'm paying quite a bit out of pocket, out of Learn with Jason's pocket to make this possible. Because I believe the reason that companies aren't doing this is because they don't have the imagination to like think of something that doesn't exist yet. They've got playbooks. And when I say, let's do something different, they're like, well, what do you mean different? And I can't point at something and say like that. So my bet is I'm going to invest into the Learn with Jason brand by doing this thing that I'm sponsoring, basically, like Learn with Jason Presents, so that I can have something to point to that says, this is what I think we could do, right? And then I'm trying to push a, like my agenda, which is that I think dev education should be more entertaining, is I guess my core assertion here. And I think that companies are already spending so much money to make this stuff happen that with a relatively marginal increase, they can up the production value to an unbelievable degree, and just make stuff that's more memorable, that's more, I don't know, it's gonna stick around longer than a conference talk, stick around longer than a memory of like how cool their conference booth was, and certainly stay longer in people's memories than like a webinar. But yeah, so I'm just putting my money where my mouth is, basically, and I really hope it pays off. So when you see that, when it launches, please share it with your boss and say, hey, shouldn't we make stuff like this? Because I need to pay the bills and I spent all my money on cameras. I'm glad Marissa's wearing her headphones. So anyways, let's get over here. So, all right. What about y'all? What are your big bets? Like, where do you want to go in your career? And like, what choices are you making? What risks are you taking to make that happen? I guess is like that's what's on my mind these days, because like there are, like if I wanted to do dev marketing the way that I've been doing dev marketing, if I said I was available for hire, I could probably get a job pretty quickly doing, traditional dev marketing. But I don't want to do it that way. I want to do it a different way. And I don't want to go to a company and then feel like, I showed up under one banner and then switched it up, and actually I want to do something different, and that's not what they hired me for. And also, I don't think this is the sort of thing that happens in one place. I think this is a community thing, and so I think it has to happen within the community. I don't think it happens at one single company. But yeah, I don't know. How to give your first tech talk if you've got stage fear. I mean, a lot of folks who have stage fright have told me that they take beta blockers, and that tends to help with like the jitteriness. I don't think that the stage fright ever goes away though. Like, I've been doing this for 20 years now, and I still feel nervous before I go on stage. But I also, now that I've done it enough, I also know that I enjoy the feeling of being on stage enough to be worth the jitters of going on stage, if that makes sense. So I guess the trick is find something that you think is worth saying, that you feel good about, and go tell that story. And like, even when you're afraid, go do it anyways. And think about how you feel at every stage. Like, do you feel bad all the way through? Like, you feel bad before you get on stage, you feel bad when you're on stage, you feel completely drained after you get off stage. Then take that as feedback. But if you feel terrible before you get on stage, and then as soon as you're up there you feel awesome, and when you're done you're like, wow, I got so much, I'm so jacked up right now, that was so good. Take that as information as well, and remember that, like, the next time you want to do it, yeah, you're gonna feel stage fright, but also you're gonna feel great once you start. And then you just have to learn that if you force yourself to cross that threshold, then it stops being scary. And I think that that's easier said than done, right? It's kind of like when somebody tells you to jump off a diving board. Like, of course you're going to be fine. You see everybody do it. Everybody's going to be fine. You still have to work through that fear of like, well, what if I'm the exception, right? But I don't know. I feel like when you go to a conference, everybody's rooting for you. Like, the audience wants to see you do well, and so really the fear is just, it's just the adrenaline, right? And if you can get through it, if you can remind yourself that you're talking about something you care about, that is valuable to somebody if they learn it, and step across the threshold, then you're gonna have a good time. Betting a lot on launching a DevRel SaaS. Interesting. Curious to hear more about that. What's my driving force for wanting to do it different than traditional dev marketing? I think, so my biggest drive is I tried to do it under traditional dev employment, and what I kept running into was this general belief that other things needed to take priority. And so I think part of it is that I don't think companies right now have built the structures that support what I want to do. So going into a company means opting into a fight against a structure. And when I've talked about burnout being work done that is not in alignment with your values, having to have a conversation a bunch of times to convince people of a thing that you know is true, but that they've never seen before and that they're distrustful of, is like, it's fun to have that conversation when there's progress. It's very hard to have that conversation when you feel like everybody intellectually understands that the thing is good, but then is afraid to actually try it. It feels like standing at like, to use the diving board analogy again, it's like you've got a bunch of people who have, like, they've climbed the ladder and they're on the high dive, but then they're looking down at the water and they're saying, I don't want to do it. I'm coming back down. And that conversation happens, like, as an example, I've had this conversation where I pitched it at, like, planning, and everybody was on board, and they were like, this is great, this is going to go super well, like, this is a really cool thing. And so I thought that was approval, so I started working on the project. And then when I came back, they were like, well, we can't actually like do that. And I was like, well, okay, hold on, why? So then we had another round of meetings where I had to overcome those objections, and then I, pitched the budget and said like, this should be one of our big bets. Here's how we're going to support it and make sure that we follow through and that it gets the results we want. And got agreement, got alignment, went back, started working, came back, tried to access the budget, and they were like, well, you don't actually have that budget. And I was like, what are we doing right now? Right? So, 4, 5, 6 approvals later, I still wasn't done. And it just felt like at every stage it was being whittled away to something that wasn't what it could be. It was like, well, can we just do it over Zoom? It's like, well, no. Like, I mean, sure we could, but now it's a webinar. Like, if you wanted to make a webinar, we should have just made a webinar. Like, I don't want to fight a war of attrition for doing something that is fun, right? That's not the way that I think good projects get made. I think good projects get made by somebody saying it with their chest. And if, I'll put it this way: if a company was in line with me on what needs to happen and was willing to, hire me and give me a budget and say, our bet is that you can take this budget and turn it into more than we would have through conference sponsorships and webinars, then, and this budget is yours. You access it. You don't have to ask for approvals. You can just do the things that you think are correct. And if you hit your goals, we will re-up that budget next year. If you miss your goals, then we'll call this a failed experiment and you'll go on your way. Great. I will absolutely take that. But that's not how companies are willing to work, right? Nobody's going to say like, here's $1 million for a marketing budget to go and do things. They're going to be in the meetings. They're going to not understand why the things are being done the way they're doing. They're going to underestimate brand awareness. They're going to underestimate third and fourth order effects. They're going to overestimate the ability of the product to sell itself. All these things that are just really difficult to just keep having that same conversation. So it's easier if I just do the things that I know work and then point at the results and say, do you want these results? And they say yes, and I say, great, then this is what it costs, right? And that is that's sort of, and like, you can look at my stuff and compare it to other people, and like, I'm not getting the results of a Theo or a Primogen or Cassidy or a Web Dev Cody, like they're pulling huge numbers. So that's the other part is like, I have to make a bet on whether or not, am I actually good enough at this to do it? I think so, but it takes time, right? And this is where the existential crisis of like, do I need to niche down? Do I need to do something different? Do I need to give up and do the FOMO? I don't know yet, but it's easier for me to bet on myself. And also, if I screw this up, like, I can just go get a job, right? I can go do DevRel at another company and do it the traditional way, and whatever, it's fine. Or I can go get a job as an engineer again, or whatever it is. And like, I really don't want to wade into that job market because it's a mess. But I trust myself enough to try, and I'm at least going to give this an honest effort before deciding that it's not worth pursuing. Because I don't know, if I could like do anything in 10 years, I'd be producing television, not working in tech. I think there would still be a lot of tech in the television because I love tech and I want to keep working in tech, but I don't necessarily think that, I don't know, my heart's not in building a better mousetrap. And I think that a lot of what's happening in JavaScript right now is trying to build a better mousetrap, and we don't really need one. What we need is to focus on getting good outcomes for the people who use stuff, not necessarily like arguing over tenths of % of performance gains or whatever. It just doesn't matter. And I'm finding that what's interesting to me is the dynamics of teams. What's interesting to me is how can people work under constraints? How can people get creative when we eliminate options or compress time? And that lends itself really well to competition reality, to game shows, to stuff like that. But yeah, that's the audience wants to learn something that'll make their jobs, life, or coding easier, and see something cool that makes them want to build with it. That's very much what I'm pushing for, and what I hope my content does now, and what I hope the content that I want to build will do even better. But again, all this stuff costs money. Like it's minimum 5 figures to put something like this together, and to do it really well, you're looking at probably 6. But when you think about the fact that like to throw a conference is $1 million, and there's just as much like cross promotion, sponsorship opportunities, et cetera. If you look at a conference versus a TV show, the costs are the same, but like the reach is night and day different. Anyways, good to see you too, Manuf. And hello, Chaos Monster. Good to see you. I don't know. I just want to do what I do, or do what I enjoy, which is front end dev. That's kind of how I feel, right? Is like you're chasing your dreams. You wanna make something cool. You want to do something that like. I feel like the hard part about being a generalist is that it's easy to start feeling like that like, oh, things are boring or whatever, and I think that sometimes that gets kind of pointed at as like a lack of focus or a lack of follow through, and so it creates some doubt in me of whether I have like, am I a generalist or am I just not willing to stick with something? But I also feel like if I'm pushing toward something that I think is worthwhile, then I can push really hard for extended periods of time. Like I've been working on this TV angle for 2.5, 3 years now. I worked at it for a long time at Netlify before I was working on this at Netlify before I became the VP of developer experience there. And it was, it just wasn't the right time. Like Netlify wasn't in the right place as a company. Their priorities were different, so it never really worked out. We got to do some stuff. We did get to do, like, I can show you a couple really fun things that we got to make as a team, as a company, such as these, which were awesome. Can put this back on screen for a second. So this is a series that we got to do where we made like pre-roll ads, like 15 to 40 second, or I guess 25 to 50 second short videos to try to explain, to connect to like the emotional challenges that we feel as devs. Like in this case, the idea was that if you've got the wrong tech stack, it just feels like the tech stack blocks you at every step and makes everything a little harder than it needs to be. So we wanted to tap into that. So we dressed up Phil Hawksworth like a robot, and we had him be just a terrible coworker. Right? And these were I had so much fun with these. These were a blast, and they landed really, really well. And also, we didn't follow through, right? We didn't build the campaign around them. We didn't do more. We just kind of like launched these and we're like, hey, we made a video, and then we just sort of let them go. And that's, I don't know, it's fine. Like it is what it is. So what I want to do is I want to follow through on this. I want to take this type of concept and I want to actually execute on the vision. And it's just really hard to do that when it feels like the priorities aren't aligned. And I think that it's really, really hard to align priorities on something that doesn't exist unless you are in charge. And so that's the challenge that I have is like, okay, so am I going to just self-fund this? I'm certainly not going to go seek venture capital. Like I don't want to have to justify any of this to a board because I feel like that would go very poorly. But I also don't know how I would do this inside of a company because I'd have to be justifying it to the leadership team. And the leadership team is going to be just as difficult as a board because they've got the same spreadsheets. Like the board and the leadership team are all looking at the same set of spreadsheets. So what do I do there? I don't want to be constantly fighting this battle that like I see something that nobody else quite sees yet. I know that this will work because the few times that we've started, it's worked before we cut off resources to it. So how do we get the follow through? And I think the way that we get the follow through is I pay for it myself and show somebody what it can be. And hope I don't go bankrupt before it works. Did I talk about being a generalist in the case of agencies? Like I got my start as a generalist in an agency. I think that it served me really well because when I started, I could kind of operate as a single person agency. I would do design, I would do dev, I would do the marketing rollout, I would do the business side of things. And then as I got bigger, I kind of got forced through the way that I grew my agency incorrectly. And I basically outsourced the things I was good at because I understood how to delegate. And I didn't outsource the things I didn't know how to delegate because I was like, I'm not good enough at these to be able to understand whether or not I'm delegating them properly, which meant that I had to do them. So the only things that I got to do in my agency by the end were all the things that I was bad at and that I hated, which is not a good way to go. I wrote this whole article on this actually. How do I don't know if this is gonna work actually. Yeah, here we go. Hey, I couldn't, here. So this is an exercise that I do to try to make sure that I'm doing a job that's actually good for me. And like I found that in my agency, the stuff that I was good at and that I was energized by doing was the stuff that I understood well enough to delegate. So as I got busier, I could hire a great designer, I could hire a great dev because I knew how to hire for those things. And then I started finding myself in more of the like, okay, so like I'm doing sales, I'm doing admin, I'm doing accounting, which is not my strong suit. And suddenly I was like completely in this category and I'd outsourced all of this. And the further along that I got, the more I felt like I spent most of my time here doing stuff that I wasn't the best person to do the job, and I wasn't having any fun at all. And I just like spent 90 hours a week here. And that's an awful place to be. Like that is not where you want to be as a creator or as an anything, as an employee. And so now I try to be a little more thoughtful about this. And like when I start looking at something, if I'm about to delegate, why am I about to delegate this? Am I delegating it because it's something that I should not be doing? Or am I delegating it because I understand it well enough to delegate in what I consider to be a proper way? I think companies struggle with this a lot too, because like if you're hiring somebody, that you should be hiring them to do a job that you can't do, and that involves trust. You have to trust them to be better at this than you are. And that's not what I was doing. I was trying to find people that I could verify that they were better at this than I was. And that just meant slowly handing away all my fun, which forced me into specializing in the wrong things, which is, yeah. So anyways, being a generalist in agency rules. Yeah, a single person on TikTok can create a video that costs $0 and brings in millions in marketing value. And yeah, a well-produced video doesn't always pay off. I think this is like the hardest part because yes, 100% yes. I think that doing this well means doing both. And so what I'm hoping for is that I work in conjunction with influencers and as one of the influencers. Like I don't want everything I make to be a giant expensive production. Like that's not fun. It's very stressful. Like I have so many things I have to do between today and Thursday to make sure that Thursday goes off well. I don't want to do that every week. That would be terrible. I love the fact that I can just sit down and turn on my camera and my like peripherals can all quit and I'm still doing a show. Like if my peripherals quit in the middle of a real shoot, like we would have had to stop everything, run the reset, do all the stuff, and just like, I don't know, maybe lose half a day, right? So I think the right balance though is recognizing that like different audiences are in different places, and for every dev on TikTok, there are a bunch of devs who maybe aren't on social media at all, or maybe they only use Hacker News, or maybe they only use Reddit, and getting a viral TikTok to affect anybody outside of the TikTok sphere is pretty tough. You can still generate a ton of value. And also, it is great if you can like have something doing well on TikTok, have something doing well on YouTube, have something doing well on Reddit, and kind of build out these more holistic things where anywhere that devs hang out, they're going to see something that feels coordinated. Because the biggest point, like as a company, the most important thing that you can do is establish a point of view that people can recognize and articulate, right? Like if your company is everywhere and nobody knows what you do, it kind of doesn't matter unless your entire goal is logo recognition. And for a company like IBM, that's why you see ads at the Super Bowl where it's like 15 seconds of a farmer standing next to the tractor and then a tractor, and then they show you a IBM logo and you're like, I don't know, I guess IBM does farm stuff. And then the next one is like somebody standing next to a quantum computer and you're like, you know what, I don't know what IBM does, but I know that they're big. And that's their entire goal, is to show that they are like, they do everything. They're everything you possibly need, and you should talk to their global business services department and sign up for a multi-million-dollar contract. Like, sure, that is the IBM goal. Startups don't. That's not their goal yet. They hope one day to grow to that level. But for the like what a better idea is this sort of like, what's the Nike equivalent, where you're trying to establish a tone, you're trying to establish a personality and a goal for the brand. You're trying to say like, this company is about, this company is for, and I think you can do that in a way that gives people a clear idea of what's going on, but it has to be coordinated. You can't just have like, all right, influencers, everybody go make a video about our tool, and the influencers make like their style of video doing their style of thing, with no coordination, and that's great. You get a lot of visibility, but like depending on what they focused on, that drives the narrative, and you start to lose control of that as a company. If instead you do what, for example, PlanetScale does, where PlanetScale has a lot of influencer marketing going, and also they do a ton of logo marketing. If you watch like Twitter ads, if you look at anywhere where advertisements can be made, you're probably going to see PlanetScale there, and they're asserting a point of view. They're asserting a stance, what they stand for as a company, what their value is. And then that creates marketing material that seeps into all of our brains, and the influencers, without whether they mean to or not, use some of that language to describe PlanetScale in the videos that they make, and the people who watch all those videos use some of that language when they describe PlanetScale to people that they are talking to, their friends or coworkers or bosses, whatever. And all of that leads to a more cohesive view of what PlanetScale is and what they're for, as compared to another tool that maybe did a spray and pray and has a lot of visibility, but maybe no real understanding of like exactly what it is, or what their intention is, like who are they actually for. So I think my intention is trying to think a little bigger. I like the strategy side of it. Like, to me, it's kind of interesting. How do we fit these big puzzles, these like multimodal puzzles together in a way that's good, right? Like, I don't think we need to be, like, marketing doesn't need to be a dirty word. I actually think it can be really fun and really engaging if you think about doing it well. Because the joke I always make is like, they say that developers hate marketing. Developers actually love marketing. They just hate the way you do it. Because everything that we do, like Vercel is above all an advertising agency. Like, it's one of the most effective brand marketing agencies I've ever seen that just also happens to have technology attached. And that's why they're weathering all of these like bad, well, okay, let me walk that back. The challenges they're having with developer experience right now, if it didn't have such a strong brand agency behind it, it would have been over a long time ago. And so, yes, developers love marketing. They just don't like your marketing. And it's because your marketing doesn't come with a strategy. There's no point of view. It doesn't make somebody understand, like, is it for me or not, right? Low-key propaganda, I think, is... Low-key propaganda, well, yes and no, because I think that the part that's really tricky about propaganda is that it's very much a spectrum. There's an evil way to do it and the way that all of us do it anyways, right? So when somebody says, I just finished this book, and we all say, oh, you know what book I just read that I really liked, and we talk about the book, we're selling that book. We're marketing that book to our friends, right? If you have a favorite knife or a favorite pillow or a favorite shoe or favorite keyboard, anytime we talk about any of that stuff, we're marketing it, we're selling it, right? We're not doing it maliciously. We are earnestly trying to communicate to somebody that we like and respect that there's a thing that we enjoyed that they might also enjoy, or a thing that we benefited from that they might also benefit from. That is the heart of marketing, and I would say that's on the good side of the marketing spectrum. As you get further toward the evil side, there is, I'm going to manipulate this story to convince you to purchase something because I want your money, right? And I think that we tend to put all marketing and sales more toward that evil side when it's called as such. But if we think about the vast majority of interactions that we have, we're always marketing and selling things. I want to convince you to try this restaurant that I'm interested in. I want you to like the shoes that I like so that I feel like I'm fashionable. Like, we're always marketing, right? And so it is subconscious, it is propaganda, but it's not evil, right? And if we're not using it for evil, if I think that a tool is good and I tell you about that tool, I am straight up marketing that tool to you, but I'm doing it because I think it'll make your life better, right? I want to help you. I want to make you have a better, more fulfilling whatever thing I'm talking about, right? And I think if we come at it from that like genuine place of these are people sharing things that make their lives better, and remember that our goal is not to lie. Our goal is not to trick. Our goal is to legitimately, like, I want to share a thing that might make your life easier. If that's the way that we approach marketing, then it's good, right? It's just awareness. It's making more people aware that this thing, like, they might not even be aware that they have a problem because they've never examined the problem space that they're in. If I grew up doing things a certain way and never was aware that there was a better way to do that thing, I would not be aware that I have a problem. I would just think that this is how life is. And then when somebody shows me that, in fact, if you do things like this, you get this huge benefit, I might go out and purchase something as a result of that interaction, but my life actually improves, right? Like, there are several purchases I've made that very much feel that way. This silly keyboard, this Moonlander that I bought, was very expensive and very hard to learn, but it's made a material difference in the way that I feel. My arms hurt less because of the way that this keyboard functions. So for me, when somebody marketed this keyboard to me, they actually tangibly, physically improved my life. And I'm not mad that they sold this keyboard to me or that they influenced me to do it. And so I think that's the, like, it has to be done from a place of like wanting to improve things. Like, you if you're looking at it as like marketing is the tide that lifts all ships. I am going to spread awareness about this thing that can make your life easier, that can make your life better. That's good. If it's, I want to extract all the resources to me, that's bad, right? It's very nuanced, I think. No, I don't. It's not a skill issue. It's very much not a skill issue. It's an intent issue. I think like the thing that's really important with all of this is remembering that what we are doing is, at the end of it, we're trying to connect to other people. Like, the reason that we want to have friends, the reason that we have families, the reason that we, don't just like sit in a pod and type on computers, but actually want to make real connections to people, is because at the end of the day, we have things that we think can make positive impacts. Like, whether or not we frame it that way, that's generally what's happening, is we're trying to extract the thoughts out of our head in a way that can benefit other people, whether that's through doing a job that pays us a paycheck, whether that's through having a conversation with a friend at a bar, helping them work through some social situation that you've been in before, whether that's trying to get somebody to, buy a better pair of shoes because their back hurt. It doesn't matter. We're always trying to like expand the impact of our knowledge, right? And I think that like if you have knowledge that you can productize because it's valuable enough that somebody would exchange money for it, then that doesn't mean that you suddenly cease being good if you want more people to be aware of it. It just means that you've got something valuable, and that people who are influenced by it find it valuable enough that they'll give you $20 for it, or $50 a month, or whatever your service costs. And so I think it's it's more about just like getting comfortable with the fact that like selling is just a core function of being a human and recognizing that just because money gets involved doesn't necessarily make it evil, and it's the intent that influences whether or not it's a good or a bad thing. As long as I don't decorate my Crocs. Yeah, marketing Crocs with zero personal benefit. Exactly that, right? Like I also have a pair of Crocs that are like my home Crocs. Marissa won't let me leave the house with them because that's a line that she drew, and I'm okay with that. I like healthy boundaries, but I wear them as like house slippers basically. When we cook, when I'm just like puttering around the house, I usually have Crocs on, and I huge fan. Like tell everybody about them because they really are more comfortable shoes. I see why every chef in the world is wearing some form of like soft Croc-like shoe, because it's easier to stand on them. And yeah, there's no benefit. Like I tell everybody about this. One of my favorite things is this hot chocolate velvetizer. It's the silliest purchase in the world. And also it brings me a ton of joy. And I have no like affiliate relationship. The company has no idea that I exist. I've probably sold 50 of those things because it just makes me happy, right? And I hope that anybody who gets one is also happy because they have one. But yeah, I think that really is like, that's a big thing. Yeah, I mean, Cody, this is the game, right? I think like, no, I hope that this stuff is useful and not me just like trying to poke holes at things. I want this to be, fun. Crocs and pajama pants from home. That's a whole vibe. I think like Crocs and pajama pants could be like, oh my God, the look that Marissa just gave me when I yelled Crocs and pajama pants.
Why would you do that?
Well, because they're comfortable.
There are things that are more important than comfort. Comfort is one of them.
Did everybody hear that? She said there are things that are more important than being comfortable. Dignity is one of them. Oh, how dare you? The chat is heavily disagreeing with you right now, by the way.
Huh?
Chat disagrees.
They can be wrong, that's fine.
Oh my goodness, I love it. Showing up to the studio in a three-piece suit. I should be in a three-piece suit. Dignity is overrated. This is the content that we came for. We had to wait like 2.5 hours to get here, but this is the content that was important today. What's up, Alex? How you doing? Okay, all right. So speaking of which, we're basically at time, and I gotta go like get a bunch of memory cards and C-stands and stuff to prep for Thursday. So I think I'm going to start winding this one down. I will say, please do mark your calendars because this, oh my God, this keyboard. This episode is going to be super fun. We're shooting it live. It is going to be here in the studio. I'm rearranging my studio right after we get off today to set up for like 2 people. I'm going to have a 3-camera setup. It's going to be a whole thing. So on the one hand, if you're just interested in what a completely over-the-top live production looks like, let's see if I can pull it off. That'll be a good reason to watch. And also, we're going to be doing a bunch of cool stuff with CSS. Adam is kind of a CSS mad scientist. If you've ever looked at the body of work that he's put out there, it is it's very cool. There's a lot of really practical tips in there, all more or less like browser native. So you typically don't need like extra libraries and stuff to make them work, which makes them really fun because you can use them anywhere and you can like build them on top of your plain CSS, your Tailwind, your whatever you're using, because they're part of the spec. They're part of the browser, right? So this is going to be really fun. We're going to do some interesting stuff. He's like bringing a guitar. We're going to work that into it somehow. He's got a whole plan. I'm along for the ride. And then make sure you stay tuned after that because we're going to have some additional stuff. We're not doing it live. We're going to do it pre-recorded because I have no idea how to do live like on location yet. I'm not like video truck ready. The Learn with Jason is a few years away from having that sort of capability. So, yeah, good. Some love for Adam. What's up, Antho? You were right at the end of the stream here as I'm starting to wrap up. But yeah, so please do mark your calendars. Like this video, share it with your friends. Subscribe to the channel. If you got an extra $4 a month and you want to support making more nonsense, please do consider joining the YouTube channel, because it really does. It helps a lot, and it gets you access to, like, I'll put you in the credits of the videos. You get access to new stuff a few days early, like up to a week early, and you get access to like special channels in the Discord with like behind the scenes and fun stuff like that. And again, it helps me out a lot. So. Subbing on Twitch also helps. I don't have any way to give like extra benefits to Twitch subs though. So subbing on YouTube gets you benefits. Subbing on Twitch helps me, and I really appreciate it. But yes, I very much appreciate all of you, no matter where you are watching and or subbing from. It does. I'm putting every dollar of it back into making this show as fun and ridiculous as we can. See if we can learn a little bit more. So. Manjot, thank you very much. I appreciate it. And y'all, thanks for hanging out. Make sure you show up on Thursday, because it's going to be a bit of an experiment for all of us, and hopefully it goes really well. I'm looking forward to it, and we'll see you next time.